To the Lee Kuan Yew Global Business Plan Competition 2017. Before we get started, just some house rules. We'll be opening up the Fireside chat later for Q&A, so please approach the mics that are at the aisles, introduce yourself and ask your question. So I would like to introduce Paul Santos, our moderator and one of our grand final judges as well. Paul is the managing partner of Wavemaker Partners, and he is also an entrepreneur in his own right, having built and sold multiple companies. Paul.
Hi, good morning, everyone. So we're very lucky today to have two distinguished gentlemen here for a conversation. I think we have an hour or so, so it's going to be a long conversation. You're going to have to sit tight. But just a quick introduction about, so on both of them. So David Su, born in Malaysia, Singaporean, but is probably one of the most successful VCs in China. And some of the logos that he has in his portfolio are amazing. We'll have him talk about that a little later on. Today he's founding managing partner of Matrix China. And Michael Seibel has had an amazing entrepreneurial career, came up with two startups with really good outcomes, which we'll have him talk about a little later on, and now has moved to what we call the dark side of the force, I guess. No, but now he's a partner and the CEO of YC's accelerator program, probably the premier accelerator program in the world. So maybe we just dive in. Gentlemen, get your mics, and we go. So David, we'll start with you. Okay. So since we have an hour, we're going to go really early. Okay. So what were you like as a kid? Like how'd you grow up? No, so the context, so how do you become, coming from where you came from to where you are today, I thought it'd be interesting. Like what was it like growing up for you? What were you like as a kid?
Really?
That long, bro. We're going.
Wow. Okay. I was born in Malaysia, so I grew up in a very, very small town in East Malaysia. So really uneventful. Really? Yeah. So, but it was an interesting switch when I finished my junior school, and my mom actually made this big decision saying that I should learn more English rather than studying just Malay. And because I was from a Chinese school, it's a very long context for you. So anyway, so I was studying in a Chinese school in Malaysia. So my mom said English probably is more useful, and then so she made a fateful decision to ship me to Singapore.
So was it common, sort of in your time or your village or place wherever you grew up to have people sort of study in Singapore?
Kampong, yeah. So yeah, I think for Chinese, I think if you look at in the 70s and 80s, a lot of Malaysians actually come to Singapore to study. I mean, it is still today, right, in Southeast Asia. So I think from that, it came to Singapore. I studied high school, two universities here.
So were you typical Singaporean student? Did really well in school? Got
not really. I think that's, I didn't do well enough to get to the government service. So, so I would say that I'm an okay student. I'm conscientious, but my interest is never really about academic studies. So I think I'm an average B plus, A minus student. So, but I have a great amount of interest on general knowledge, stuff that's not in the textbook. So I read a lot. I'm a big science fiction fan. So, stuff like that. So over the years, I like to, look at computers, internet. So even as a student. So, okay. So it's a little bit of that.
Okay, cool. How about you, Michael?
So I grew up in Brooklyn, New York. My dad was a programmer, and so we always had a computer around, but I sadly did not become a programmer. I was a good high school student, and then I went to Yale, and I was a very bad university student. Then I realized that they didn't force you to go to class my second semester freshman year, and I probably went to 30 hours of class total after that point. I did so poorly they actually kicked me out of school. And so I was on the, so I was on the what they call the 5-year plan. I had to go away, come back, graduate. But yeah, I didn't really like Yale academically because I didn't want to be an academic. And it seemed like they were just training a bunch of academics or a bunch of finance people. I also didn't want to be a finance person. So yeah.
But you took political science, was it?
Yeah,
right?
I was a government kid.
And your first job was government related, right?
Yeah.
You mind sharing a little about that?
Yeah, my first job, I was finance director for a U.S. Senate campaign, and I was 22 and 23, which just goes to show you how bad that campaign was. But we did well. We almost won, despite me. But actually losing was the reason that I got into tech. If we had won, I would have been in Washington. And because we lost that campaign, a whole set of things happened that got me here.
Cool. And David, NTU, right?
NTU, computer engineering, yeah.
And then NTU to China.
Yeah, when I graduated from computer engineering, actually I worked very shortly in PSA, Paul Singapore Authority, as a system analyst. But I think for a couple of months, I was just staring at the terminal and with 5 programmers, and I say, I don't want to do this my entire life. So I joined an American software company called Lotus, which is, so I joined them and it was really with the Singapore team. But that's kind of less than a year and a half, and then they decided to say, oh, this short story. I think at that time they just started the Lotus China office, brand new, and they hired a gentleman who's a Chinese American who came in 6 months within the job, and then he got poached by none other than Netscape. Okay, and they say, oh, I'm going for a better, more interesting internet software company, and so we have a team of 6, 7 people in Beijing, and they say, okay, we need backups, we need help. So they say, oh, David, why don't you go up for 6 months and help, sales and tech? They always say that, right? So I landed in winter in '95, and then basically, helping out kind of transition and find a general manager and stuff. And then they say, oh, you're doing a pretty good job. Why don't you stay 6 months more? So yeah, 22 years later, yeah. So that's kind of, I would say that I spent Lotus and IBM software company because IBM bought Lotus in '95. And yeah, so I was there about a total of 7 years, of which 5 is in China.
Okay, so that's an interesting time, if you don't mind. So you're in China, working for a US company.
Yeah.
You're not Chinese, and you're selling.
Yeah.
How do you do that? Or what was it like?
I think that's good. Good question. I was doing about a year of technical sales in Singapore. Singapore is obviously a more developed country, and the process is much more transparent. And so when I go there, I think it's really hard. Because I'm more a techie. I'm a fresh sales. So to me, I would say over the years, I always kind of approach it with what's the customer's pain point, right? They usually have multiple solutions on offer. They can try different things. And so you're always really looking for that one or two things that your software or your product could really help them. And I don't know how many Singapore government folks are here, but for example, in '95, we sold Lotus Notes to Singapore government. I think a lot of people hate us after that because that means they move away from Microsoft Exchange, which is a very painful process for a lot of people. But the government at that day really focused on security, document management, and Microsoft at those days are really not good at it. So they've been much better since. So I think when we go to China, similar issues, right? The Chinese government likes security, likes solutions, they like process and document management. So we catered the product really to kind of fit the China-specific applications. So it was a deep learning curve. Singaporeans are not known to be very adaptable, like especially for me. So I go there, kind of deep end of the ocean, and you just swim. Yeah.
Okay, so how do you how do you find yourself in San Francisco after the campaign?
So I went to college with this guy named Justin Kuan, and because I dropped out, when I came back, we were the same year. We were both 2005. And we became really close friends. And so he and his friend, Emmett Shear, after school, decided to apply for this thing called the Y Combinator Summer Fellows Program. And that was the first class of YC. And they got in. And so we kind of had these parallel paths where I was working on a campaign for the first time in my life, and they were working on a startup for the first time in their lives. And they would tell me about what this program was like, and it was very strange. They would say, so once a week, we go to this guy's house, and I was like, that's weird. And then they're like, well, and then he cooks us food, and I was like, that's weird. And usually it's like a crock pot with like beans and horrible stuff in it, and we're like, okay. And there are these other people who are also working in startups, and they all come too. And then we kind of sit around his house once a week, and we're just like, this sounds really weird. And he gave us money, and when we talk about our startups, I was like, this sounds super weird. And it's like, no, it's totally cool. And then the rest of the time, the program is in Cambridge. The rest of the time, we live in our apartment in like squalor, basically, writing code all day. And at the time, one of the founders had a girlfriend living with them. So it's like two guys and a girlfriend living in this like horrible apartment, writing code all day. And I was like, that sounds horrible. And so after a year of doing that, they invented a company called Kiko, which was an online calendar company. And they were sick and tired of working on calendars after a year. So they actually sold it on eBay for about I used to remember this number. It was about $250,000. I think it was $258,000. Sold it on eBay. And they had this other idea, their next idea, which was that Justin would wear a camera on his head and broadcast his life 24/7. And
what year was this?
This was 2006. And Justin said this idea to me over dinner with his dad in DC. And I said, that's the dumbest idea I've ever heard. It's literally very stupid. And so by the way, like there's no such thing as a bad idea, because that became a $1 billion company. And so fast forward a couple months, we lost the campaign. I hadn't taken a vacation, and they decided that it was much better to start a company in San Francisco than in Boston. So Justin and Emmett were starting this company, and they were going to drive out across the country. And they emailed all their friends saying, hey, last hurrah on the East Coast. And I said, hey, can I join you on the road trip? And I didn't know at the time that they packed everything they owned into Emmett's Honda Civic. And so to give me a seat, they had to basically throw away like a quarter of their belongings. But they didn't mention this, so I grabbed a seat. And so I was like, so what's the plan, right? We're road tripping. I want a vacation. And they're like, we're going to get on the highway, and we're going to drive straight for 4.5 days, and then we're going to end in San Francisco. And I said, that's horrible. So I planned this road trip. So we get into San Francisco 4.5 days later, and it's October, and it's beautiful weather. Strangely, October, summers in San Francisco suck, and the fall is great. And we have this thing called Fleet Week. So there are fighter jets flying over the city. And so I'm like, this is like, I'd never been to California. This is like the best place I've ever seen in my life. Fighter jets and all this stuff, right? And they're like, well, we're not staying here. We're going to stay in Mountain View, which is this suburb like an hour south. So I was like, okay, this sucks. And I was captive for a week. I had 2-week vacation. They're working on this stupid startup, and I'm just sitting there twiddling my thumbs in Mountain View. And I was like, well, I don't want to feel like an asshole. I might as well help them out. So I helped them find an apartment. They had raised $100,000, and they just had these 2 crinkled up checks that they hadn't cashed because they hadn't started a bank account. So I started a bank account, and by the time my week was up, they were in an apartment, and they had a bank account, and they kind of, set up. And it was very weird. The last weekend of my trip was my birthday. And we went wine tasting, which is, the douchey thing you do when you're in San Francisco. And on the way back, Justin gave me a gift. He gave me an iPod Nano. And I remember telling him I'd never owned an iPod before, and I thought they were so cool. And I was like, but we're not really, guys don't really give gifts to each other. So I was like, what? What's coming? Like, I was nervous, right? And so he drives me to the airport, and he says, we want you to join our company as a co-founder. And I'm like, no, your idea is horrible. Like, it's a camera on your head. This is the worst idea. Like, that's like, I don't know what I'm doing, but I know that's bad. And, but it was my best friend, and he's like, well, will you think about it? And you can't say no. So, all right, I'll think about it. So I fly back to Baltimore, where I was doing the campaign, and I have a life. I had this amazing apartment. I had a girlfriend. I had my whole setup. My plan was to go to D.C. afterwards and work in campaigns, which would have been working at the Obama campaign. I didn't know that at the time. And I'm sitting there, going on with my life. And about a week and a half later, they send me this email. And they say, we found this other guy, Kyle, a guy named Kyle Vogt, and he's going to build our camera, our live streaming camera. And he created this 16-page PDF of exactly what it would take to build the prototype and the real version. And it looked like legit. It looked like, someone smart had really thought about this. And so I was like, well, fuck. Like, I don't know what I'm going to do for my own life. They got this Kyle guy. They have $100,000. Like, maybe this could work. They have a bank account now, an apartment. And so that became very weird. So suddenly I had to call my parents and say, I'm flying across the country. I had to sell everything I owned. I had to basically break up with my girlfriend. And 2 weeks later, I'm sleeping on the futon that I bought for them in the living room of the apartment that I found for them. And my first job was to recruit Kyle. Kyle ended up being founder of Cruise, which sold for $1 billion. So Kyle ended up being very important. So yeah, that's how I got there. It was not well thought out.
Cool. We'll talk about the Justin TV sort of war stories after. So David, how do you go from selling Lotus software to becoming a VC in China?
I think the context is like 1999. When you're bought over by IBM, which is a great company, but it's entirely different, right? It's like it's a 5,000 to 7,000 people software, all Boston, Cambridge, to a 200,000, organization, right, globally. So when I was there for coming to my 5th year, and internet is happening all around, right? So, even in China, I think in 98, 99, you're seeing a lot of activities being picked up, a lot of returning Chinese scientists and Charles Zhang, who founded Sohu, came back in the December of 96 and founded Sohu in 97. So you started to see a lot of activities, and enterprise software, frankly, is relatively boring. So, and you're saying, you're starting seeing friends and all that doing that. So in very bad timing, in December of 99, I decided to quit IBM, because I was responsible for the region. So they gave me, you have to quit 3 months process, right? You got to hand over. So I was happily, disengaging, and I joined actually a firm called TDF, which some of you may know, which is Singapore-based. That was supported by a National Science and Technology Board back in 99, 2000. And, the timing is really horrible. I started in the first week of February. The market went away in mid-March, right? So that's kind of the most painful thing you could do, because you give up. You used to have a team of 200-300 people, 2 assistants, and you fly business class everywhere. And into a one-man show, in Shanghai and in Beijing.
Sorry, how old were you at that time?
I'm 30 years old. Yeah.
At that time?
Yeah, at that time. So, and then you kind of said, this is a real mistake, right? You said, what have I done? Right? I took a huge pay cut and all. And then, but I think the vision then was that there's a lot of foreign money coming into China. So there's Hong Kong-based fund, there's Singapore-based, so even at that time, there are US venture funds who kind of say, maybe China's interesting, we should go and take a look. And I think the idea in 2000 was to build a country-based VC fund, which is like, we'll go out and raise 30 to 50 million US dollars, and versus a couple hundred million, type of size, which is focusing on US, and just say, let's see, there's interesting companies to be done. So when the bubble burst, it took us much longer. It took us almost 7 months to raise initially a $50 million fund. We raised 30 million, but we decided to stay and just say, let's start investing. So that was late 2000. Yeah.
So late 2000, you have 30 mil.
Yeah.
Did you stop, or was that your first close? You stopped at 30?
That's all the money we could raise. Yeah.
Okay. So 30 mil, what's the typical check you would write at that time?
I think it would be 1 to 2 million. I think at that time there's no real China is not sophisticated, like angel, pre-seed, seed, A round, A plus, B, so it's just whoever needs money and it's interesting ideas, and the good thing for us, I think, we were probably the very, very small pocket of money that was still around after the bubble burst. That a lot of people who raised money in 99, 98, spent all of it, all the companies bled to death, and there's a lot of VCs, but there's no money, right? So we, a small team, two of us, and say, oh, we got checks. So people are still sort of, for example, I met Jack Ma in 2001. I met Robin in 2002. So even at the kind of the big companies at that time was having real difficulties fundraising. Yeah.
So for those of you who don't know who Venture TDF is, if you don't mind,
sure.
I know you don't like doing this, but fine. What are some of the logos that you were able to catch with $30 million at that time?
Before that, let me tell you the mistakes I make first. So you're relatively young guy then, and then coming out thinking that I know a lot. So my first two investments are all enterprise software companies. So one is a carrier grade, messaging platform. So like most people done multimedia messages and all that. So all the things that power kind of the carrier and engagement, and it was a great idea, founded by 3 Stanford returnees, and perfect resumes. So my first two companies are very painful to me because I spent 6-7 years working on them, and it all, unfortunately didn't work out. Then by end of 2002, I was saying that, I got to be kind of more broad range. I got to talk to smart people and kind of figure out my way out and just don't focus on enterprise software alone. So I started to talk to kind of internet space, consumers, and I think that 30 million, we end up investing in 16 companies. So we have 10 exits, 6 IPOs. So pretty good track record, yeah.
Yeah, so he's being modest. I'm going to squeeze him a little more because that's hard to do.
Yeah.
Right? So when you have 16 investments only to get 6 IPOs for VC is amazing. And some of the names that IPO'd are?
So we invested in the Baidu B round in 2003.
What is the valuation around that time?
200 million valuation. It wasn't so I moved away. Like I said, we were really focused on early stage. We want to own a lot to what's really interesting, right? And then who needs money? And I bumped into Robin, and actually our initial discussion was 100 million. He's willing to take the offer, but Google came in and really want to invest, and they say, oh, it's Google, so we'll double the price. so we end up co-investing with Google, and the valuation was doubled. I was really upset with that. So we did that, and then we did Alibaba C round. And
what was it at that time?
There was a 250 million valuation. Yeah. So, and then it's cheap, huh? And
well, relative to where they end up, right?
Yeah.
It didn't feel cheap at the time.
It didn't feel cheap. So it was challenging. So I was saying that when we Alibaba just celebrated their 18th anniversary, right? They talk about this famous apartment that Jack Ma has and at the lakeside. And I've been to that. There's the secret hideout. In '99, when they launched B2B services, they started from that small apartment. I think it's like 1,200 square feet. So it's relatively small with 20 people in there, right? So it's a China-style garage. And then and when they launched Taobao in the late 2003, 2004, actually the money we invested is really focused on Taobao. And again, they have 20 people working in an apartment. So I went there. People were sleeping on the floors, and so that's kind of the thing we do. And then and that year is a good year for me. So I did Focus Media, also Series A, which turned out to be a $10 billion company.
You came in at?
That was 40 posts. Yeah. So
it's amazing. So going back to you, Michael. So how do you convince yourself from what you said was the dumbest idea in the world? I think you became CEO and eventually had a good outcome, but maybe you can share a couple of stories from where you started to where you ended up.
So I think a lot of investors overemphasize solving a personal problem as the kind of core reason to do a company. I do think that there's a nugget of kind of deeper truth there, which is that there has to be something that's going to keep you working on the company when it sucks. And like what people don't talk about is that when the company's not doing well, it sucks. When it's doing well, it sucks. There's no time when your company doesn't suck. Yeah. And so there's got to be something that keeps you in, and it's easier when you're solving your own problem, right? Because it's just, oh, this is what I want to be doing. For me, it was actually working with friends. That was the big thing that kept me in. I didn't want to let my friends down. And then the second big thing was that this is the first thing I'd ever done. And so it was kind of a grade on my life. However Justin TV turned out was going to be, a grade on how Michael Seibel's life has gone so far, and I did not want an F. So that's kind of what kept me in and kind of motivated me when it seemed like a bad idea. And let's see, I think that the other thing that's interesting about startups, one of the sayings that we say at YC is that it's always a shit show inside. And so there was this great story from back in the day at Justin TV. The way we split up the responsibilities, I had 3 technical co-founders. So Justin was more of a front-end guy, Kyle ran video, and Emmett ran kind of back-end. And one weekend, the video system goes down hard, and Kyle is out of town. He's in Tahoe. And Emmett is kind of doing this thing that I always love engineers doing, where it's like, I don't know how to fix this because it's not my system, but I have to look like I'm trying. So he'd be like, banging away on the keyboard, and then every 5 minutes, be like, Michael, find Kyle. Like, I don't know what the fuck's going on. And so my job is to find Kyle. He's not picking up his phone. We're in San Francisco. Tahoe's a 3.5-hour drive. So I'm thinking to myself, how the hell do I, physically touch somebody who's 3.5 hours away? And I think, okay, how do you get something to someone's house quickly? And the only thing I could think of was pizza. Pizza gets to people's houses pretty quickly. So I call up one of Kyle's friends, and I figure out where he's staying. And I call up a local pizzeria in Tahoe. And the guy who picks up the phone, I say, all right, this is what I need you to do. I need you to go to this address, knock on the door, and tell the person who answers that the website is down. And literally, like, the guy who answers the phone is like, this sounds serious, I'm gonna get my manager. So manager gets on the phone, I repeat the same thing to him, and he's like, okay, do you want us to send a pizza too? And I'm like, hell no, like, this is an emergency. And he's like, okay, but to do this, we have to put a pizza in the system. Like, we have to, I was like, yeah, great. So he's like, well, what kind of pizza should we put in? And I'm like, fuck, like, the website's been down for like an hour and a half now, right? This is emergency. And I'm like, cheese pizza, just cheese pizza. And he's like, well, unfortunately, a cheese pizza doesn't meet our delivery minimum. And so I'm just screaming. I'm like, extra cheese, like whatever. So this poor guy gets sent out, knocks on Kyle's door. It turns out Kyle was taking a nap, and his phone was in the other room out of battery or something. Guy knocks on the door, and he says, I don't know if you know what this message means, but the website is down. And Kyle's like, fuck. And then he's like, Kyle then asked the guy, is there a pizza? And he's like, no, there's no pizza. And so he called us and got back to work. But like that, I mean, at that point, we were a website with 30 million monthly uniques. Like we were a real website, and that kind of stuff happens. So I always think of those things. That's like the fun part of doing this, is that you're not experienced, you don't have good processes, you don't know what's going on. You have to make it work. And like founders are the types of people who, when they hear that story, they're like, that's awesome. And like non-founders are the type of people when they hear that story, it's like, well, those guys are horribly irresponsible. Which we were. So yeah, that was a good story.
So how does it become Twitch?
So that's a great question. So just to give you a perspective, from 2006 to 2012, the company, Justin TV and Twitch were the same company, same cap table. The company's valuation went from $1 million to $24 million. From 2012 to exit, the company valuation went from 24 to $1 billion. So that's a long way of saying, if you've been working on something for 6 months and it's not going well, don't give up. It takes years sometimes to figure out how this whole thing works. And your original idea is almost always flawed in fundamental ways, almost always. And so if you're hitting the market and the market's saying, oh, this doesn't work for me, join the club. Like that's what almost everyone experiences. So for us, what happened is we went from Justin broadcasting his life and us realizing, wow, we don't really create content well. We're not interesting to watch at all, to we're gonna make a website where anyone can broadcast live video. And the challenge was the video that people wanted to broadcast was stuff they didn't have the rights for. So it was hard to scale that business. And there was always this small group of about 10% of our traffic that was video games. And we just ignored them for years. We were just, oh, these guys, we don't give a shit. Play your video games over there. But one of the things that Emmett pointed out was that like, that was the only content he enjoyed watching. Right? So think about this. We have this website with like hundreds of millions of hours of video, and like the only content that any founder watched was these kids playing video games, and they would do these speed runs. Can I beat Super Mario and under, and honestly, it was probably the only content that was particularly interesting that wasn't, copywritten. And so we had this crisis in 2011 where we had 2 months of runway left. We were burning $250,000 a month, and that translated into about $1 million of expenses a month and $750K in revenue. And no investor wanted to invest in us because we were a website with a bunch of copywritten content. So I gathered kind of a chunk of the people that were kind of core to the company into the room. We were maybe 35, 40 people at the time. And I said, hey, look, we got 3 options. We're either going to die in 2 months, we're going to hit break even, or we're going to generate $100,000 in profit per month. What do we want to do? And everyone was like, it'd be nice to generate $100,000 in profit. I was like, okay, we're not going to leave this room. And by the way, this room was like some horrible back closet, like which counted as our conference room. We're not going to leave this room until we write enough ideas on the whiteboard that can either make us money or save us money. So we spent an hour just writing all of these ideas. And we were extremely transparent with the whole company. We were like, look, we have 2 months of money left. Either we execute this plan or we die. Everyone needs to get on board. That year, we ended the year with over $1 million in profit.
Wow.
So we went from 2 months to death in August of 2011 to $1 million in profit by the end of the year. And we thought we were pretty hot shit. We were like, well, we're awesome. Then this guy named Gideon Yu comes to our office. Gideon worked at Google, worked at Facebook, worked at YouTube, was at that time a VC at Khosla. And he comes in the office and he's wearing this like San Francisco 49ers jersey, and he's like, you guys are proud of yourselves, but I can tell you that what you've done is shit. Your website is shit. No, if your company's going to die within 3 years and no one's going to remember you, this is not an accomplishment. And we were like, fuck, you know? And when he said it though, you know when somebody says something that you don't like, but you know in your heart is like 100% true? That's exactly what it was. So we had another meeting, and we said, we're going to brainstorm a bunch of ideas to save the company, new products. And 2 ideas came out. One was focus on these video gamers that we've been ignoring for years. And the other one was build Instagram for video. Now, here's to show you how investors know nothing. We thought we would go and talk to a bunch of investors and get their opinions on which idea was better. All the investors said the video game idea was horrible shit, a complete waste of time. They all said the Instagram for video idea was the best idea ever. So to this day, there hasn't been a successful startup that's done Instagram for video. SocialCam, the company that came out of that, sold for $60 million. Twitch, that shitty live streaming video company, sold for $970 million. So investors don't know. If you go to an investor to try to figure out whether your ideas are good, you're literally asking to be lied to. They just have no idea.
Yes, very true.
So what we did was we decided, okay, we want to be goal-driven. We want to be metrics-driven. We're going to launch both of these products. We're going to give them 6 months. And whichever one's successful is the one we're going to keep. And we're going to keep Justin TV running on the side because that generates the cash to fund everything, because we know we can't raise from VCs. And so the official version of this story is that both were successful. Completely not true. SocialCam was a shit show. It was horrible. It was not doing well. And Twitch was actually doing well. And so we had to decide, okay, what are we going to do? And we didn't want to kill SocialCam, honestly, because we were so jazzed up about what all these VCs thought about it. Like, we kind of got in our head, oh, this is going to be the whole game. And so we're like, okay, let's spin out SocialCam. And that's what we did. And later, in 2012, we got lucky and figured out how to sell it. But then Emmett became CEO of Twitch, and it kept on growing. And it turns out that when you have something that people want, and you talk to your users and build what they want, your website grows. But that's not a lesson that we learned for the first 5 years.
Okay, cool. So David, wildly successful venture TDF. Why didn't you go on forever? How do you end up at Matrix? Sorry.
I think we would, well, it's like all partnerships. Sometimes, after 7, 8 years, you decided there's different perspective, and so in 2008, essentially I found my current co-founders, which is Bo Shao and David Zhang. And Bo Shao, and he's very sore about this, but he was the founder of EachNet, which is the original eBay of China, and which the company we backed, Alibaba, is fully responsible for killing it. So. But he made the decision in 2004 to sell his company to eBay, and then he retired at 30 years old. It's a very good life. He went away 2 years. Have a few kids. And do some angel investing in Silicon Valley. But when 2007 came, after 3 years of that, right, you say I need to get back to action, especially from an entrepreneur's point of view. But he didn't want to start a company. So he spoke with me and said, so we decided to basically build another early stage venture capital, kind of really focus on digital, mobile, and internet. Yeah.
So you knew him from backing him?
No. We backed Alibaba, who killed this company.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. So how did you know? Sorry, how did you?
I think we know each other by reputation. He's one of the really the top entrepreneur, even back in 2000 to 2003. He's wildly successful. He sold his company to eBay for $280 million in 2003. That's a lot of money. Even now, right? So then we met and we chatted, and he said that he's interested to kind of build a new venture capital fund, and then really just focusing on China, and that's what I've been doing for the last 8 years. Then.
And David Zhang, how did this?
And also, I know David in 2003 when we did Focus Media together. We're both Series A investors. So So we know each other for a long time. So I think it's just a few of us, like-minded, want to build a small venture capital fund, which is going to go with kind of our philosophy, really only Series A investments. And this way we started in January of 2008, yeah.
So what's the dynamic like? Like, how are the three of you, what do you feel the three of you bring to the table, or how you complement each other?
That's a tough question. I think Bo is the math geek. He's literally the genius. Every time he walks in the room, the average IQ goes up. So he's the first full scholarship, to Harvard, for math program from China. So he's really into that, and then super smart. So when he looked at he was in Boston consulting, I think, and he looked at the eBay model and said, this is a perfect digital marketplace model, buyers, sellers, and low friction, and he just packed up his bag and left, and then came back to China and founded Ethernet in 2000. Right, and then of course at that time there's already eBay, but eBay was not very global then, just focused on US market. And so he's kind of the geek, who's kind of think about deep tech, the complex business models. I would say I'm probably the people guy. I started my job, right, despite the short stint of programming, but I really spent many years working with customers and understanding their pain points. And so, I think generally I have a very good sense of where the founders, how they turn out. So I really agree with Michael. Most of the ideas we hear, even the best entrepreneurs, the ideas are really bad. I wasn't bad, just it won't turn out to what you expect. But the guys, right? You had to focus on the founders, and some of them. We have go against our instinct, on business models, but we back the person, and it's really hard to do because like you say, the ideas really it's horrible, but the guy you really love, right? And then you kind of spend time working with him for a few months sometimes, but sometimes you get competing term sheets and people who's also blind faith, right? Want to put money with him, and you have a very short time window to decide whether you want to put money with this gentleman or lady. So in that sense, I think I'm generally known in the firm to be kind of focused on very people-driven, working out with the founders. Yeah.
Cool. And then, so again, just to put this a little context, so if you thought the venture TDF fund was impressive, he did it again. So in Matrix, he had another fund. If I recall the stats, it's about 40 companies in that fund, 15 substantial companies, and seven unicorns. Again, globally, just to give you some perspective, if you're a VC and you find maybe 2% of your investments are unicorns or 5%, that's pretty good. 7 out of 40 is closer to 20%. So how did that happen again?
I think it's the right place at the right time. What we did when we raised our second fund, the fund in question, back in 2010, I still remember very clearly that at that time iPhone is 3GS, right, 2009, and we were looking at this. I don't know if you minus 8 years ago, everyone thinks iPhone is cool, but no one thinks iPhone is going to be that big, right? So I saw this touchscreen product, and the significant part of iPhone 3GS was that it has GPS. It's full touchscreen. It's really relatively. Everything is coming together, right? So you have for the first time in human history, you have a very, very powerful small computer, graphics-driven, touch-based. It tracks you. Its communication is all into one, right? So kind of the Steve Jobs vision, and we're saying that would that change the whole internet space, right? And I think a lot of people were very skeptical in 2010. So I'm from generation I use Motorola, StarTech. I don't know how many people use, but Nokia E71. So it's all black and white, small screens, and for a time, even in my first kind of 8 years as a venture capital, I invested in Symbian applications, but it never really took off, right? So a lot of people were very skeptical about mobile apps. But we make a very faithful decision was that we kind of all into mobile. So for a period of time, we were investing in like mobile calendar application, mobile weather. We were seeding companies, and from 2010 to 2013, and the business models are coming together. So we back, Didi, in a Series A early time. We did Ele.me, which is Grubhub or Food Panda in Singapore's context, right? And when we invested, these 3 undergrad students who's really serving the university. All they were trying to do was that the university dorms is so far away from the food takeout places, and they have to kind of take a 25 minutes walk to get. They said, why don't I put an app with my favorite eatery, and I can just order my food. So that's how Ele.me started. And today they serve 10 million daily orders, right? So they started from universities, and Didi, and obviously they started with a small idea. That's actually different from Uber. There's a lot of taxis operationally, but people was like, it was so difficult to get them. So what they did, they put the kind of, why don't you install this driver app, right, for taxi companies, drivers. The taxi companies aren't very happy with it, but the user saying, yeah, it's cool. We could have that. I can get orders, and kind of supplement my kind of usual cruising, and people will call in to book taxis. So a lot of the ideas actually start very small.
So you basically made a big bet on mobile.
Yeah.
It was a big theme, and that's how you sort of.
Yeah.
So congrats on that. So back to you, Michael. Moving from 2 successful startups, like you downplay SocialCam, but 60 mil to Autodesk is more than what many people will ever get. But how do you move from that to becoming sort of head of YC? Again, sort of most famous accelerator program in the world. No pressure, right? Like
there's no pressure. Well, the first thing is I don't really see us as investors.
Okay.
I think that's the big thing. I think that the difference in our jobs is so huge because you get to make 40 bets in a fund, and I get to make 300, 600 bets. And so, I have to take 7,000 companies and draw a circle around 150 and say, hopefully there's an Airbnb in there. And I think that allows us to do something that's like very different. I think the other thing that's really cool about YC is that I can be lazy. Companies come to us. 7,000, 7,200 companies apply every 6 months. And so we also do recruiting, but because we have this philosophy of open application and everyone has to go through it, I'm not responsible for going out in the street every day and finding the next great deal. And so I think what's so cool about my job is I'm not doing it to make money. And I think that was the mindset that I didn't quite understand until after both our companies sold. And it was the mindset that PG had when he started YC. He had made money with ViaWeb. And so YC was, in some ways, a community service project. In some ways, it wasn't designed to make money first. It was designed to help founders first. And so it was funny, because somewhere along my road at YC, my dad called me and he said, well, what do you do for community service? Like when you want to break away and help people? And I'm like, I think I do community service every day. Like it doesn't look like making money when you're talking to the Airbnb guys super early, because that company looked like a complete shit show. That didn't look like it was going to be a good company. It just looks like you're helping people out. And I think one of the things that's unique about good startup environments is that there is a lot of paying it forward. There are a lot of people who became successful, and somewhere along the road, someone helped them out for no compensation. And in the back of their head, they always remember that. In the back of their head, they want to give back as a result. And we always have this funny joke at YC, because as partners, after demo day, we're also allowed to invest. And investors oftentimes want to look at our investments as a signal. Oh, who did you like, you know? And I find it funny for two reasons. One, nowadays, YC is big enough that I'll only know 20, 30% of the companies well in each batch. But two, it's just as likely I'll invest because I think this company needs an extra boost that my signal can help. Then I'll invest because I think it's the best company. And
we don't like you guys.
and what's hilarious is that the reason why is because you can't tell who the best company is going to be. It's very hard.
Okay, so maybe talk a little about Airbnb, because you helped shepherd them in, right?
Yeah, so Airbnb was actually probably the first startup that I actually helped, and this was during Justin TV. And they looked at just as much a shit show as us. So it was, the original introduction was because we hired this guy named Phil, and he was roommates with Brian and Joe, two of the founders of Airbnb. And I was at South by Southwest, and Phil convinced Brian to stay an extra day at South by Southwest, and we told him that we were going to give him a place to sleep, and then Phil basically flaked. And so Brian is sleeping in the lobby of the Hilton where I was staying, and through some crazy set of circumstances, we find him there, and we're like, oh no, you actually can come sleep. And so he's crashing in my room because it's a friend of an employee, and that's what you do. And he tells me about doing this startup, and I'm like, okay, people staying in each other's houses, that's whatever. And couch surfing was a thing by then, and I'd actually used couch surfing, so it was like, oh yeah, some people do that. But he knew nothing about the Valley. He knew nothing. I literally said to him, oh yeah, there are these people called angel investors, and they'll invest in a company at your stage. And he thought I was crazy, and I believed in angels, so it took him a little while to Google search and figure out what I was talking about. And so they really knew nothing. And the other thing was, they didn't have a technical co-founder completely on board. Nate was in Boston at the time, and he was kind of working on this as a side project. And so what happened at Justin TV is we kind of adopted them. And they would come by every month or so and show us what they were working on, and we give them some advice. And the thing that got us to work with them was not because we thought it was a good company. It was because every time they came in, they'd made progress. They'd built something, they'd changed something, they'd talked to users. And the other thing was they were sticking with it. I probably met them in March of 2008, and they didn't get into YC until October 2008, and they didn't really start doing well until 2009, 2010, but they kept on sticking with it. And oftentimes founders that you meet, they'll email you, and then 6 months later, it's the same update. And so we just kept on helping them. And I remember an early version of their product was so bad. They required, as a host, they required you to basically register with Delaware as a company and get an employee identification number in order to accept guests. And they demoed this for us, and we're just laughing at them. We're like, you guys are idiots. This is not going to work, But iteration through iteration, and then long story short, they come to us, they're hey, we have no money. They basically had maxed out credit cards. They were done, and we were like, did you apply to YC? And they were like, no. And we're like, what are you guys, idiots? And we look at the deadline. The deadline was the day before. So Justin emails Paul and says, hey, if these guys submit, will you look at their application? And PG said yes, but they have to submit by midnight, which is hilarious because we take late applications. It wouldn't have mattered. But I think PG wanted to make sure they were serious. So they submit an application, and they get an interview. And YC is not what it is now. The class back then I think was maybe 16 companies. This was after the 2008 crash. So literally, YC gave all the companies in that batch the option to not present on demo day. And to wait a whole year because they thought that maybe no investors would show up and that no money would be invested. And Airbnb decides to do the round, decides to do YC, and there are a couple of kind of core tenets of YC, core learnings that we give to founders that came from the Airbnb guys. But one of the most important things was do things that don't scale. So a typical investor will look at what a startup's doing and saying, well, that's not going to scale. That might get you 10 users, but it's not going to get you 1,000 users, so don't do it. And what the Airbnb guys taught us was like, hey, 10 users is better than 0 users. And unless you have users, you're not learning how to make your product better. So it's okay if the first 10 users or the first 100 users aren't scalable, because interacting with customers is better than not interacting with customers. So they did this really cool thing where they went online and they basically poached hosts off of other products. And they said, this is what we'll do. Like, it's so desperate. We will go to your house. We will take professional quality photos of your apartment or house in New York. And you can use them on every other platform. Like, we don't care. HomeAway, Craigslist, we can, but only if you also set them up with us on Airbnb. And then instead of hiring a photographer, they went themselves. And they tell this crazy story where they got to meet all their users and had a great time. And one user, when they explain that they're the founders and they hand them the great photos, he says, you know what, I've been renting out my apartment for 10 years, and I have a notebook of all the things that a great online site for renting out your apartment should do. Do you guys want to see it? And they were like, of course. And then for 2 hours, he basically laid out all of his experiences doing this as a host and bringing people in his house and da-da-da-da. And, if they had been relying on Facebook ads or outsourced sales team or yada, 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 all the things that look like they scale, they never would have had that interaction. And so, that's the kind of thing that made them special. And it worked out okay.
Cool. So David, again, for both of you, all this success, right? What's next? Like, what do you ever switch off? Do you ever think about relaxing, or what keeps you sort of interested in?
Yeah, it is relaxing. So
maybe you are already.
So I would say that I agree with Michael. A lot of what we do, we don't really feel like work. So because every day, Michael can sit in YC and wait for people to come. We unfortunately had to hunt a little bit, so, but it's good because every day you're really talking to almost always very energetic, passionate founders who has good sense of they're really passionate about changing things, right? It could be their own personal, the perspective about doing a particular product or services, or some could be more public-minded. They could be NGOs. So we don't really do kind of NGO stuff, but we actually talk to a lot of the potential companies that kind of focus on that, water conservation and stuff. Unfortunately, we are more capitalists, so we always say, what's that, and how to make money? That's kind of the more difficult questions to answer, and then because of that, I think it's something that we really quite enjoy, and so do I want to have more personal family time? You could always have more of that, But truthfully, I think we'll be lying to say that we're not having fun at work, right? So I think from that perspective, we probably will do. I personally probably will do this for quite a number of years to go, and I think it's really deeply rewarding to see an idea going through from the initial stage to where it is. And I echo Michael's point is that. Yeah, don't give up only 6 months and then a year. And a lot of people will tell you it's stupid, many, including myself, right? And kind of the best ones, right? And will pivot and will change and give it a couple of years. I think the biggest challenge is that we see the odds. The odds are against founders, right? So even we look at maybe. We kind of 5,000-6,000 business plans a year. We meet maybe 600 teams, the entire year, and we invested in anywhere from 20 to 40 companies a year, and I would say this 600 is pretty well qualified, right? I would say probably the YC, the type of companies, the 100 over companies will be in that 600 pool, and so just because we don't invest doesn't mean. It's the end of the world, and a lot of companies we invested in turn out to be so-so, and it's just circumstances, it's energy, it's the it's timing, and sometimes you have a great product, and you pivot at the wrong time, and you ran out of money. And also Silicon Valley and China is full of these stories. So I think, yeah, we'll continue to do more to kind of try to help push things forward. And I think Singapore, I'm being a Singaporean and all, and we'll do more stuff here and try to make things work. Yeah.
Okay, more stuff here, right?
Yeah.
More stuff here. Okay, so Michael, you alluded to it earlier. I'll switch it just slightly for you. Like, so maybe the mark you want to leave on YC. What's the Michael Seibel mark on YC?
So when I was when I joined YC, I didn't really understand the organizational part. I understood the founder experience, and I did it twice as a founder. And the thing that got me, the pitch, was we're trying to build an organization that can last for over 100 years in the Valley to help founders. And that was a very interesting thought, because while the Valley is actually, fairly old and has been investing in startups for, 60 odd years, most of the institutions that help founders are relatively young. There are relatively few VC firms that last a long time. And really the oldest technical institution in the Valley is Stanford. And so, I think about that, I was like, okay, this is a very unique challenge. Most funds are kind of loose organizations of people who will work together for a time and then go and do other things. And if YC is going to be around for 100 years, it has to be able to survive that. And so what was interesting to me and impactful was when I was going to Yale, we were celebrating what they called a tercentennial. And I had no idea what this word meant. It was the 300th year anniversary. And I'm looking around Yale, this is a fairly poorly run place, but it survived for 300 years. I'm like, that's impressive. And what's interesting is that even the best companies don't live for that long. And so that is really what kind of addicted me and made me think, okay, this is a really interesting challenge. And as I say, the first decade of YC was about establishing kind of the core organizational structure of our early stage program, funding founders in batches, open application, 10-minute interviews, so on and so forth, and establishing the core advice, launch quickly, do things that don't scale, so on and so forth. The second decade of YC was trying to figure out, one, what kind of organization could sustain past the founder of YC wanting to do other things. The second one was, how do you make YC economically viable? Startup accelerators are horrible businesses, like the worst business. And YC, I would argue, only became economically self-sustaining in the last 2 years. And we're 12 and a half, 13 years old. And we're the best one. So horrible business. Please don't start an accelerator if you expect to make any money. And so how do we make it economically self-sustaining? And then the last and most important one is, how do we support our alumni after YC? We really wanted to kind of solidify those three things. And so when I joined, I decided to join for 10 years. It was also one of these things where I wanted to get married and have a family, so I figured it'd be nice to have a job for a little while. And then a year ago, I was asked to become CEO, which I did not expect. And suddenly these organizational problems became mine. So that's, that's the mark that I want to leave. And we often talk at YC about how we want to hand it off to the next generation of leaders. What are the foundations we want to put in place so that the people who are running YC 10 years from now can run a program that's 10x better, and the founders who are coming through can have a 10x better experience.
Cool. So see, we actually lasted an hour. It's not so bad, right? What we're going to do now is open it up for questions. If anyone's, please stand up, come to the mic, introduce yourself. And
Hey Michael, this is John from BWB. So I've invested in a bunch of YC startups, and what I've realized is that you go to demo day, you're meeting them for the first time, right? You basically don't know the founders. And like you said, after spending 100 days with them, you still don't know which the best companies are. So guys like me, I have no chance at all, basically. And Justin things that anybody can play in the NBA. So the question is, if I go to demo day, how do I find the teams or the founders who are 5'5" but will end up playing the NBA?
So, as an investor, I think there are two ways to optimize demo day. I'll go through this pretty fast because it's mostly founders in the room. One is you start before demo day. We post companies on our website as soon as they go live, and the best investors are scouting the batch way before demo day. And they're understanding who they like, and even oftentimes writing checks before demo day. I think the second thing is you can take your time. I think that it's very easy to get caught up in the 5 to 10 companies that the investors in the room think are the hottest companies. And what you should know is we tell founders, look, like this is not correlated with success. You will have friends in the batch who will be able to raise $2 million in 2 days. And that looks like success, but it's not. And so, the message we give to investors as well is like, you can spend time with the companies. You can meet with them. You can decide to invest now or in 6 months or in a year. And of course, the more time you spend with them, the more you're going to know. And so, to me, those are the two optimizations. But I would argue that demo day isn't horrible if you're just betting on demo day, because how long would it take you to filter through 7,200 companies? We've taken 7,200 companies and we've presented you with 130 to 150 of the best ones. And so, while it's hard to narrow that down to the 1 or 2 that might be Dropbox, this is probably the highest quality set of founders you can meet in 2 days without having to do any work but fly to the valley. So, it's not as horrible as...
Suck it up. Okay. Anyone else? Please stand. Yeah. So if you want to form a line, that'd be easier too, so at least we know. So please go ahead.
Hi, Michael. My name is Celine. The question's for you. Can you give us any advice on how accelerators should approach a mentor program? In some cases, it's open to all. In some cases, they're looking to pay for high-quality, committed mentors. Any suggestions?
So, man, I hate giving advice on how to run a good accelerator because I don't know. It's not something I spend a lot of time studying. What I would say is that, one, we don't call anyone at YC a mentor. 2, the vast majority, no, every single person who is a partner at YC working with companies has done a startup. And to some degree of what I would call spectacular success or spectacular failure. Both, I think, are very valuable. The next thing is that we try to pull as many what we call experts and visiting partners from our alumni pool. Like, we have a very specific philosophy on how YC should work, and we think it's best to bring people in who actually went through YC. And then I think like the last thing is that we don't believe in a curriculum. Like so much of the advice we give could be like reduced down really simply. It's like, did you ask your customer this question? I'm not your customer. Or, hey, is this the #1 problem you have in your business? If no, ignore it. So much of the advice is I would argue, almost formulaic, and it's just the process of having a founder say a bunch of stuff, and then you being calm and collected and be like, no, that's not important. You don't have to worry about it. And so, how can you tell who's good at doing that? I don't know. That's really tricky.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Another question to Michael, and first of all, thank you for reassuring us that your peers are idiots doing a lot of dumb shit from our shit show.
Lots of idiots here.
So you've mentioned recently that there's a gap in the startup market for parents and kids. My question is about the specificity of the founders you look for. So if you wanted people to address that market, what kind of skills would you be looking for? Are these generalized across all kinds of founders?
You would be surprised. The process of selecting YC companies is more a process of disqualification than qualification. So what do I mean by that? When I read a YC application, the things that I'm trying to figure out are, can the founder communicate the idea clearly? Like the most important question in the application is, what does your company do? 50% of the answers, if I read them to you, you would have no idea what the company does. Like just no idea. Like you might vaguely know who the customer was, vaguely, right? But there'd be a lot of marketing language and synergy would appear and all these weird words that nobody cares about, right? And so those get disqualified. I'm looking at how the founder has split their equity. You know, if the founder is, you know, saying, hey, this is my co-founder, but they have 1% of the company. That's talking to me about how they see their team. I'm looking at the progress. When did they start and how far have they gotten, right? Because you can talk to me about all kinds of good game, but if you're building a website and it's been 2 years and you haven't launched it yet, you kind of suck, right? So I'm looking at that. I'm looking at how long the founders have known each other. One of our big data points is that if the founders have known each other for a very short period of time, YC can actually break the company itself because it's so stressful that you will get into a fight with your co-founder that you can't break. We look at, does the company have the ability to build the MVP itself? Outsourcing engineering, we invest in tech companies. Outsource the tech, then what are we investing in? The idea? 7,200 ideas every 6 months. The ideas are dime a dozen. And so I go through the process of like elimination on those fronts. The last one is, you know, what is your unique insight / is there something that I've learned? And you'd be surprised. The people who check those boxes more often than not get interviews. So what I'm not looking for is what school you went to or what credential you have or what award you won. Like sometimes founders give me that stuff, I'm just like, I don't care. Credentials are irrelevant. I don't care what school. I don't care about any of that stuff. Good founders get shit done. And so then, you know, when you're in the interview, you've got a 1 out of 4 chance of getting into YC. So that's how we look at it.
Okay, thank you. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. All right, I got a quick question. My name is Terrence. I had a quick question from Michael. So I want to go back to the story that you told when you were a founder and that you had the 2 product features that you wanted to do an A/B test on, which one was more successful. So from a people management standpoint, you had 2 teams working. One was working on a pretty good, well, it was more positive, one was more negative. How do you keep them going motivated at the same time? Because you're all part of the same company. But if I'm on the other team, I'm kind of sucking.
Yeah,
can you
poorly.
that story? Yeah.
Poorly. The reason why we had to kill Social Cam or spin it out was because you can't do that for very long. So yeah, I would argue that we actually had 3 teams, a team that was keeping Justin TV alive, a team working on Twitch, and a team working on Social Cam, and we can only do that sustainably for a very short period of time.
Right.
So we weren't trying to optimize for doing that for a longer period of time.
Right.
And just speaking from kind of the venture capital, we treat it as very negative signal that you have 2, 3 products concurrently operating. Yeah, so generally it means that you haven't really figured things out. You know, and it's not that you're not investable. It's just very high risk, you know, to kind of focus on that. Yeah.
I wouldn't look at anything we did there as the ideal way to do things. It was much more, hey, we got ourselves in this jam. How do we get out of it?
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Last 2 questions.
Okay.
They get 2? He said, oh, no, we got time. Fine. Okay.
So Mike isn't working, so I'll just yell. I'm Alex from Cleveland, Ohio, and I think there are a lot of startups here that are considering applying for Y Combinator. I'd like to ask, for an international startup, how do both the process and the prospect of raising funding on demo day and post demo day differ for international startups?
So for international startups, I think typically it's harder to raise Series A dollars in the States, but it's actually pretty easy to raise angel funding in the States. And the reason why is just, you know, angels are what's the best way of saying this? They're kind of up for just kind of see what
Altruistic,
happens.
you know, lovely.
Yeah, they're just like, hey, let's see what's going on. You know, the way that we say this a little bit more hilariously is that one of our partners said, the amount that I typically angel invest is the amount of money I spend traveling to my vacation. Not even vacationing, just getting there. So it's not like a huge decision in their lives. And so I do think it's hard to raise Series A, but for angel, I think it's fine. And then I think for applying to YC, I have to be honest, international isn't something that I think about a lot when I'm reading an application. It only really comes in when I'm thinking about how big the market could be, which is not the highest level thing that I'm thinking about when I'm reading an application. So I would say, to be honest, any given time, 20 to 35% of the companies in a YC batch are international. Something we're very comfortable with. We've done it for years. No biggie. Yeah.
Okay. So we'll go this way, ping pong. So.
Thank you. My question is about initial coin offering. Yes, some startups might find easy to go through the route of initial coin offering to venture capital. At the same time, recently China banned initial coin offering. So what would be from David's perspective and
Okay. So apt. We talked about this before. So David, why don't you start with the China perspective?
innovation or just a speculation?
Yeah, we got it.
Okay. I think ICO, Michael and I and Paul were just chatting before we came on, is that my sense is that from a venture capital kind of the assisting financial institutions or angels or VCs, we look at ICO with interest. But actually, the people who are doing ICOs, generally our sense, maybe a rude way to say it, are folks that have not really been able to kind of raise capital. Michael can talk about it in the US context, but so for us, we look at a bunch of startups doing this, but for China, unfortunately for the ICO players, they got shut down last week. So it's a very stringent requirement that so ICO is completely banned. So it's a prosecutable offense. So the Chinese players went from really excited last 6-7 months to now it's all dead in the water. I think ICO as a whole, I think it's a good idea. It's an idea. That's still very, very early. So essentially, it democratized even further, right? The fundraising. So you could raise a lot of money from a lot of people. And Michael talked about this, angel investing as a travel expense. Some of this strictly maybe, I don't know, maybe there's maybe $100, $200. It's really very small quantum, but it managed to attract a lot of capital, right? So that's why it's getting a lot of notice last couple of months, from US and China specifically. I don't know. It's still probably too early to tell, where it's going.
I think of it as not a solution for fundraising. I think of it as if you want to have a blockchain-based company, and it really makes sense to do that, and it makes sense to run it with the coin, then it's a viable option. So I look at, Filecoin, they're a YC company that did a large ICO, and when hearing their pitch, everything aligned. It was, hey, we need to get to scale quickly because we're competing with Amazon. We want to do a decentralized product because there's all of this storage all over the world. We want the coin to be something that people use to buy and sell the storage, right? So the whole story made sense, and it made sense to build the company using a coin. To me, that's great. I think when it's seen as a add-on to another company as a solution for fundraising, that's when it gets a little trickier, because I think that's when you can have expectations not aligned with reality.
Yeah, for example, let's say you want to launch a fast food business, right? So you've been raising money from traditional means, and suddenly say, oh, ICO is cool, so why don't we put ICO and I raise $2 million, right? So that's what Michael means. It's not really natural. You're just trying to use it as kind of alternative fundraising means. Yeah.
Okay.
Hi, my name is Ellery. I've got a question for David.
Yeah.
David, you mentioned earlier that you have quite a good sense of founders, having interacted with quite a lot of them. So could you just share with us some of what's the E or the philosophy of you assessing founders? Are there some attributes that are common among the successful ones?
Michael used such a word of wisdom. So, the YC company, the application, 50% of the time, even after our screening, the founders can't even tell us very clearly what they really want to do. Synergy, holistic, it's all these huge words, right? Integrated, the best in line product. So I think a lot of times is that we don't spend a lot of time. We spend an hour with the founder, and in that short period of time, I really want to hear the guy, like, how do you come up with this idea, right? So what inspired you? So is it the story of just Twitch or Social Cam or Baidu or whatever? Is that how do you initially thought about it, right? And why do you think? What are you delivering? What are you solving, right? And of course, this requires a lot of good communication skills. I mean, not all good founders are great communicators, but generally they could put across very clearly in simple words. We are not that smart, right? So you had big words. You treat us like kindergarten kids, right? So like this is really important, but don't use complex words like synergy, right? So because we don't really know what that means, right? So tell us in simple words, right? In a very short period of time, what makes sense, And I mean, if you put a lot of thought around your product, generally you have a good sense of how big is the market, who is the kind of key target customers. A lot of times, a lot of these customers that you're trying to address may start out very small, and that's something that we always challenge: the size, the scaling. But at least we know that you're solving 10 people's issues, right? Or 100 or 200. But you can't walk in and tell me, I want to start a cafe, right? Because there's so many of them, and there's no uniqueness to it, right? So if you want to do something that no one's kind of do it, or if someone's doing it but not really doing it well, So I think that's kind of what we look for, and communication, ability to kind of put across your ideas. And if you're charming, some people, distortion of reality, they're very good at really convincing you. If you don't put money with me, you're gonna miss out the next Elon Musk and all. And there are founders like that. The ideas may be flimsy, like I say, but they're so charismatic and charming that it forces you to open your wallet, right? I'm sure Michael has experience into that. So I think that's kind of what we look for.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we'll do the last two, okay? This lady and then this gentleman over here. Yes.
Hi. This question's for both Michael and David. For a very early stage company that's just maybe post demo day, how important is it to evaluate the synergy? No, the connection between yourself and angel investors. So meaning that, do you optimize for short-term vision alignment? How important is it to optimize for a long-term vision alignment, given that as a young company, things might still be in flux? Yeah.
I think this is a common question for YC founders. And the first thing I say is a good investor gives you money, signs paperwork when you tell them to sign, and shuts the hell up. There's a lot of room below good. Like that's an A investor. There's some A+ investors, but damn, A is pretty good. So I think that oftentimes there's an overemphasis on investors being helpful. Most of the time, the number one thing they're doing is giving you, the most of the help is not getting in the way. There are many things an investor can do to make your life really bad, and there are few things they can do to really help the company. So that's the first thing. The second thing I tell a founder is you can optimize for quality of an investor more the later you are in your fundraising process. So if you want to raise $1 million, you can be a lot more picky when you're raising the last 250 than the first 250. And then the last thing I say is that you do want some minimum qualifications, right? Where you get in trouble is when you're raising angel money from people who haven't invested in tech companies before or who haven't come up through the tech world because they have bad expectations. A good angel investor is thinking, I'm flushing this money down the toilet and maybe, rarely, magically one day, a check will be coming back to me. And that will be very surprising. Like, that's a good angel investor's mindset, right? And if someone has made money in other industries, they often don't have that mindset. And so that's kind of the minimum bar. Like, do they get that this is throwing away their money? Good, and then do they sign the paperwork and act pretty quickly and don't want to get in your way? Good, take their money. We always tell founders, like, the best thing to do is to fundraise and get back to work. The more time you spend fundraising, the less time you spend talking to your customers.
Yeah, I totally agree with Mike. I think I don't really like the word mentor, which oftentimes ties with your angel investment. It sounds like the guy really knows what he's doing. I can tell you, even for me, I don't know much of the time what I'm doing. So when I'm investing, so when you get money from them, you know, I think you're going to take directions or alignment of goals and all that. I think you're probably having a kind of wrong guy putting money with you, because the mentality has to be that this money is not so important to them. You know, they better be vacationing than trying to call you every other week to kind of find out what's the latest, right? Have you got your customer? Have you wrote your people, you know, PowerPoints? So, you know, obviously when they invest in you, they have hopes, right? This is could be very interesting, and everyone has this dream that you're going to invest in the angel round of Facebook or Google, right? But you know, it rarely happens. You know, probably 1 in a million chance. And so to you, I would say don't focus a lot on what angel investors want. You know, you can convince them to put money with you, but really get back to work and kind of focus on delivering, you know, your products to your customer. Yeah. Okay.
And you can always get advice from other founders. Like, I always find it much easier to get good advice from other founders than investors. Anyone who's solving problems in the moment and dealing with customers in the moment is in a better position to give you advice than someone who's done it in the past or maybe never.
Okay.
Thank you.
Last question. 2. Okay, last 2. No more, okay? Because people are leaving. Okay, 2.
Okay,
yes.
Hi, Michael and David. Just a quick question for the two of you. So, does a pitch deck or pitch really matter if you have growth?
Ooh, that's a good question. Does the pitch really matter if you have growth? I'll give you my experience, and then I'd love to hear from the VC side. So, YC, we do not consume decks at all, right? So we consume these applications, and every company has to apply. So it's that's separated. As a founder of SocialCam, there was a time where we were a top 5 app in the US. And that allowed me to kind of see how hard these VC rules really are. And it turns out they're extremely loose. So, you know, one of the things I was told was, oh, it takes 6 weeks to go through a process with a VC. Well, if your company is a top 5 app in the App Store, it doesn't. The other thing is I was told was that the VC has to invite you to a partner meeting, and the first meeting is typically not a full partnership meeting. Well, when you're top 5 app in the App Store, you actually invite yourself to the partner meeting. You know, we met kind of initially over coffee with the VCs on like Wednesday and Thursday, and we said, we're taking partner meetings on Monday and Tuesday. And they all said, of course, right? So that rule didn't apply. Our deck was literally a series of graphs going up and to the right, like every single metric exploding. And then the last slide was like questions that you might want to ask us that we can go into more depth on. And that was it. And they loved it. And then even better, we were in a partner meeting and the product went down. So we had to stop the meeting because we were growing so fast and like fix everything, which they were like, oh my God. And it's like, holy shit, this is amazing. So put another way, like nothing is better for having leverage over investors than your product working, right? And I think that like founders spend way too much time trying to like ninja their deck and trying to meet with investors and not enough time talking to their customers and making their product work. A great investor will follow customers all day long, all day long.
Thank you.
So, yes.
You want me, oh. So,
Thank you.
growth is definitely good, right? Because you could draw that chart and it looks beautiful and it creates kind of momentum. I agree with Michael. You know, for us, you know, VCs is a very competitive business too, right? It's a, you know, while we're picky, you know, the founders is also selecting kind of the VCs that are backing them. I agree. You know, when you have a product that's in a real momentum growth, we come to you, right? You want a meeting at 8 a.m., we'll show up, right? So, you know, the fastest deal we have, okay, the longest deal process we have done is 6 months. Okay, there's many reasons to it, why it took so long. The fastest deal we've done in 60 minutes. Okay, that means we met the team, you know. So China is very competitive, right? So when the founder came, he already had 2 term sheets on the table. The other VCs is coming to my office, coffee shop behind us. They say, you know, we're ready to sign, right? So I have literally 60 minutes from talking to him to before he stepped off the door to decide whether I like him or not. So after 30 minutes, I think this is good. I put an urgent button. I pull the other 2 partners from their meetings. I say, you come here now. We're gonna meet this team, right? So within 60 minutes, he met 3 partners in the group, and the 59 minute we say, give us 5 minutes. So we chat. We say, okay, it's all system go. So I say, you don't know, we make you an offer. You cannot refuse, but you cannot leave our office. If you leave this office, the term sheet expires. So you, as a founder, have 30 minutes to decide whether you want to take our term sheet or you can go down to the coffee shop below, which we think is an inferior venture capitalist. And so it's a very competitive process, right? So I'm just telling you, when a hot company happens, right? You know, the founders have clear momentum, and sometimes you don't know how good you are, right? And you walk in, you're thinking that, oh, this is Matrix, or this is Quora, and you know, and hopefully we can identify, right? So when you have that situation, be very thankful, but again, take the money and go back to work, right? Because this is just a glimpse of the moment of your 8 to 10 to 15 years of your kind of the whole entrepreneurship, right? The whole startups, right? It's a very small part of it. Of course, it's better to be waiting for 2 years fundraising and getting 200 rejections, right? You know, so, you know, but fundraising is just one part of it. Yeah.
And I want to add to that, growth is not just top line growth. You know, when I'm looking at a company that's growing really fast, I'm also asking myself, what's their retention and what are their margins? Growing negative margins is really easy. It's very easy to give away free money to get users. And so, and a lot of VCs have put money against that and lost it. So, and it's also very easy, one of the problems we have at SocialCam, it's very easy to attract, not very easy, but it is easier to attract a lot of new users and have bad retention than it is to both attract a lot of users and have good retention. Right. So like, founders often ask me this question, it's like, can I grow really fast but have shitty retention? Or can I grow really fast and have negative margins? Like, no, of course not. But if you can align up positive margins, retention and growth, then there are no rules. Like, you know, you're gonna have fun.
Okay, last question.
I think that you mentioned a lot of like how to so as a startup, as a founder, as myself, I was thinking that how to choose a good VC. That is a very critical question because when we receive the term sheet, the VC will list down what are the terms that they want. Probably, particularly I see there's 2 types. They give us enough money, but they want full control of the company.
That's a very bad VC.
And there's another type is that it doesn't give us enough money, but they say that we provide mentorship, we provide customer opportunities. Like, so do you think that it's better that we choose something that we think that as a small fund first, and then we grow progressively, or you think that we should go for the other type of VC? Which one? The good and bad thing.
Okay, if you give me these 2 options, I mean, the second one is probably better. They're both bad, but you know, least bad. Right? So I would say that if an investor comes to you, whether it's angel or you know, venture fund, and say that they want to take majority, I think generally it's a very bad sign. You know, because why are you starting companies, right? Because you want to, for one of the key reasons is to really plot your own destiny, right? To kind of really operate, you know, and kind of, I won't say fulfill dreams, but really kind of solve a problem, right? Just and you almost have to have full control to drive that. But you need dilutions, you need people who believe in your dreams and put money with you. But someone who's kind of on set and say that, oh, I want like 51%, even 40%, right? So it's a very clear bad sign that, you know, he wants a lot of ownership and you are likely to be working for him. That means you have to do this weekly reporting to him, you know, which is no fun, right? Because you're not getting paid for it as an equity. And so on the second option, you know, if he wants ownership in a minority, but he wants a lot of, he was very hands-on. I think it's good for some startup founders because you're relatively inexperienced, but generally, you know, we also get worried because, you know, like we said, you know, you should be talking to other founders, you should be talking to your customers. Mentorship has a very nice ring to it, but a lot of times, investors don't really know what they are doing also, except they have a checkbook. You know?
Yeah, I would ask myself two questions. One, did I go into this fundraise with enough leverage? And should I be going back and getting more leverage, getting more customer success before fundraising? And then the second question I ask myself is, how do I know how much money I need? I think founders drastically are extremely poor at understanding how much money they need. Our advice at YC is almost always that companies early stage should be driving towards break even. Because it's so easy to build a negative margin business, and you can't scale a negative margin business. It doesn't work. And so kind of the question that I would ask myself is for that second option, maybe that's all the money you need. Maybe what you're thought of as undercapitalized is actually a good amount of money. But if not, like, go get more leverage. Get a better deal.
Okay, so we've gone over time. But it's certainly been a very informative, inspiring session for me. Maybe I'd ask the audience to join me to say thank you to these two gentlemen.
All right. Thank you, Michael, David, and Paul. So we're going to take an hour's break for lunch. Lunch is served outside in the foyer. Before that, when we return at 1 o'clock for the grand finals, we will have 6 teams presenting, and I will let the 6 teams know now in alphabetical order which order they will be presenting later. Team 1, Cambridge Cancer Genomics. Team 2, Complex Disease Detector. Team 3, Elephant Chain. 4, Kulisha. 5, Spectra Plasmonics. And 6, Regal Solutions. So 6 teams, please meet in the far left corner for us to load your slides. Thank you.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I read a book last week written by Chris Payton. So he shared about 3 foolish things that the ancient Chinese recorded in ancient Chinese texts. That 3 foolish things that people shouldn't do. The first thing, never go into deep sleep in an unknown house. The second, never to set out to sea in a borrowed ship. And the third one, never to lag behind an elephant as it crosses the bridge. Let me tell you a 4th foolish thing. Never to accept being an MC of a startup pitching competition when you do not have any MC experience. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Chang Zitian, co-founder of Intellects. I was trained as a lawyer and was one of the pioneer batch of law graduates from the Singapore Management University. As such, I'm extremely happy to be here today to be your MC for the 9th edition of the Lee Kuan Yew Global Business Plan Challenge. The competition started in 2001 and is organized once every 2 years by the Singapore Management University. This is the 9th edition, and the team has taken it global. This year, we received 550 submissions from around the world, and eventually 36 teams were invited to Singapore to undergo a one-week program to meet mentors and to understand the Singapore innovation and enterprise ecosystem. Eventually, this afternoon, 6 teams are selected to pitch before a very distinguished panel of judges and to share their technology with everyone here today. Each team will have 10 minutes of presentation and 15 minutes of Q&A. Now, let me take the opportunity to introduce the very distinguished panel to everybody. So first and foremost, we have Mr. Robert Chu, partner of iGlobe Partners. Secondly, we have Mr. Paul Santos, managing partner, Wavemaker Labs. Then we have Professor Liu Paochuan, advisor of the National Research Foundation. Next, we have Ms. Shirley Wong, managing partner of TNF Ventures. And this morning, we have listened to Mr. David Su, founding managing partner of Matrix Partners China. And Mr. Michael Seibel, CEO of Y Combinator. Last but not least, Ms. Chong Chet Ping, managing partner of Green Meadows Accelerator. So about 15 to 20 minutes ago, as you see me walk around on stage, and I saw this, this standing table, this reminded me of a typical Singaporean wedding. However, today, we're not here to celebrate a wedding, but we're here to celebrate, it's a celebration for entrepreneurs. So let me take this opportunity to welcome the first team on stage to pitch before everybody. The first team is Cambridge Cancer Genomics from the University of Cambridge, UK. Ladies and gentlemen, a round of applause. Let the celebration begin.
Can I start? Okay. So, hello everyone. I'm Evelyn from Cambridge Cancer Genomics, and we're working on blood testing to help guide cancer treatments. So currently, when a patient is diagnosed with cancer, the doctor will put them on therapy. But the doctor won't know whether the treatment is working until the very end of the treatment cycle. Actually, I don't have a clicker. Realize that. Sorry, guys. I was like, huh. Okay, it's on now. Okay. Yeah. So the patient has to have nausea and a destroyed immune system for 6 months. And the worst thing is the chemo fails for 2 out of 3 people. So 2 out of 3 times, the patient gets all of these negative side effects and none of the clinical benefit. And the global impact of these ineffective therapies is huge. So this is a graph that shows the number of patients who respond and don't respond to treatment for a variety of cancers per year. And so the colorectal cancer market, which is the one we're going after first, that one has over 1 million patients who don't respond to treatment out of 1.5 million patients. And the other cancers, which we'll be targeting after colorectal, they also show a similar trend. So currently, when the patient goes on chemo, the doctor is completely blind to whether the patient is actually responding to treatment because the patient only gets a scan at the start and end of treatment. So at Cambridge Cancer Genomics, we're working on continuous monitoring to allow clinicians to switch therapies during the treatment. So for example, if a patient starts off on therapy X and a doctor finds out that the tumor has become resistant to that particular therapy, the doctor can then switch to therapy Y. And if that happens again, the tumor becomes resistant, the doctor can then switch to therapy Z. And so this switching of therapies allows doctors to tailor treatments and personalize treatments so that the patient can get the most effective combination of therapies. And the great thing about our technology is that it's very versatile. We can apply this for any type of therapy out there for cancer. So that could be chemotherapy, radiotherapy, or surgery. And we're doing this by building blood tests to give real-time feedback on treatment. So when a patient comes in for chemo, they usually have to get their blood drawn anyway. So we just have to take an additional blood vial. We'll extract the DNA that the tumor sheds, and then we'll use our machine learning and AI algorithms to analyze and select the most important features to track over time. And this allows us to use common lab equipment that's cheap and fast to monitor the tumor. We'll then build a patient report and send it to the doctor, and the doctor can then make those treatment decisions. We do this every 2 weeks so that the doctor can continuously know how the patient is performing. And so we've already gotten some great results. While the patient is on chemotherapy, we can report the tumor size down to 2 millimeters. And when the patient is off the therapy, we know whether the cancer is coming back 205 days before scans, which are the current standard of care. That's giving doctors a 7-month head start. Because of these great results, we've already been attracting a lot of interest from clinics around the world. We've established relationships with 12 academic institutes and cancer clinics worldwide, thus collecting over 15,000 samples. That's 4 times larger than any publicly available academic database out there. In fact, CBCC, which is one of the largest cancer clinics on the west coast of the US, they were so impressed by our technology that they actually decided to invest in us. These are our customers, the clinics, and they're actually deciding to invest in us. We're starting an observational trial next month with 200 patients, collecting and analyzing their blood samples every 2 weeks for 6 months, thus generating very high-resolution genomic data. Our AI gets better every time we add on a new clinic and get more patient data. Thus, we're building a data moat. As our AI gets better, we increase our predictive power, and more doctors want to adopt our technology for their patients. The time to enter the US market is now. We've already developed a strategy to enter the US market early next year because of LDT exemption, what's known as lab developed test exemption. And this means that we basically have to run the lab tests as a service, and we don't need any FDA approval at all. And in addition, a lot of private clinics in the US are moving towards value-based pricing. So that means that they get to collect any costs that they save from using our product. And so clinics are more motivated to take us on. We'll be using the data we generate from these early US sales and trials to get approval in the UK and Europe, and will later on be moving into the Asia Pacific market. The treatment monitoring market that we're targeting is huge, valued at $16 billion. And on top of that, the cost of ineffective therapies worldwide is $446 billion. We can help decrease this massive number alongside increasing our revenue. And we can do this because we're 20 times cheaper than any other available technology out there for monitoring cancer. There are other liquid biopsy companies competing in this space, and they also analyze DNA in the blood. But they all rely on sequencing technologies, which are too expensive for repeated use for continuous monitoring. And so there's companies like Grail, which is focusing on early detection, Foundation on tumor profiling, Guardant on continuous tumor profiling. But because we use AI machine learning to select only the most important features to track, CCG is the only company out there that's working on continuous monitoring. And we have the right team to do this. We have expertise in machine learning, cancer, and biology. We're all PhD researchers from some of the top universities in the world, and we have over 25 years of experience in this field. John, our CEO, has a background in pharmacology. Harry has expertise in computational biology. I'm a chemist and engineer, and Ramesh and Hannah have backgrounds in translational cancer. And on top of this, we're backed by a strong scientific advisory board and includes oncologists from leading research centers. So, to reiterate, we are Cambridge Cancer Genomics. We've built a blood test to guide cancer treatment. We can do continuous monitoring already and get the tumor size for a patient down to 2 millimeters. We know whether a cancer is coming back 205 days before scans, which are the current standard of care. We're 20 times cheaper than any technology out there, and we're entering a huge $16 billion cancer monitoring market. Thank you.
Does it work? Okay. Now you have some impressive statistics that is shown. Could you share with us a little bit more about your sensitivity as well as your specificity of your test that you have gotten so far?
Sure, yeah. So sensitivity is currently running at about mid 90%. And that's very high, and it's not even necessarily a problem. In the worst case scenario, they send the test to us and we say you're going to have to use the current standard of treatment. But for 95% of people, we can improve this, massively improve this. Our specificity is at 100% because you would never see mutational DNA in the blood when there isn't a cancer present.
In the healthcare segment. But I think we missed one question. A lot of emphasis is on improving the efficiency, getting results earlier, and then cutting the cost by 20x, right? But do you have any view with respect to what extent this might improve the treatment efficacy? How would this improve the chances of cancer patients surviving?
Yeah, absolutely. So some of the stuff that we're working on at the moment, which our AI extends into, is things like looking for what are called subclones in a cancer. And so that's when a cancer is evolving. As part of it is shrinking, you might have a small resistant part of the tumor, and that's what causes the resistance as that grows out. And by monitoring different parts of the DNA, we can actually see that growing. And we can say, for example, in 4 weeks, you're likely to gain resistance to this treatment, and that's when you should consider switching.
Okay, you have put together a great team, but I know that you guys come from different university and of course different background. Can you tell us a little bit more? How do you all come together?
Yeah, sure. So most of us met at the same university. So I did my PhD at Oxford, but I did my first postdoc at Cambridge, and that's where I met John. And these guys worked on.
Yeah, sure. So we actually did, John and I actually did a biotech consulting project, and John actually knew Hannah from working at MedImmune. So it's sort of like where we all knew each other. We all just sort of worked in this space.
You have said you have 15,000 samples done. So how many real lives have you saved? I mean, in all your data.
So we haven't run any interventional trials yet. What we're hoping to do is increase our data moat first, and that gives us the most protection. And then with that data, so taking these 2 weekly blood samples is something that's never really been done before. And that's what gives us the greatest protection. And then we can start looking at intervening and really helping people.
Yeah, just one question. Because you mentioned that your other competitors use genomic sequencing, right? So because I just from here, I don't really understand the science a little bit. Could you just maybe even for the audience, like how are you approaching it differently?
Yeah, absolutely. This is a common question we get asked all the time. Is people tend to lump together the liquid biopsy space, and they aren't entirely sure as to how we differ. And the truth is, they answer completely different questions for the patient and for the clinic, even though they work with some of the same same tools. So GRAIL and some are focusing on early detection. So that's a case where you don't even know you have cancer yet, and you come in for a standard blood test. That's an incredible challenge. Some people focus on profiling, which is going to be more about treatment information. So they will say this treatment is likely to be the best treatment for you. Whereas what we are focusing on is whether that treatment is working here and now. So we complement all of those very nicely. But we're the only people who are involved in that carved out niche of specifically looking at if the tumor is growing or shrinking.
I apologize, I don't have a great question for you guys. I just wanted to say, nicely done and good summary slide. I got to support the YC companies out there.
Okay, earlier you also mentioned that after Europe and US, your next destination is Asia Pacific. Could you tell us what is your go-to-market strategy, in coming to Asia Pacific? And what is the possibility of you coming to Singapore? And how are you going to conquer Singapore?
So yeah, sure. So Asia is about 60% of the world's population, and unfortunately it's half the burden of the world's cancer. So we have a great market here, and it's actually the next one. Oh yeah, sorry. So actually, as the Asian population gets older, cancer is going to happen more and more often. So unfortunately, it's going to be a growing market. But as well, at the same time, they're actually adopting new technologies and medical devices ahead of the other world populations. So interestingly, the liquid biopsy market is going to grow much rapidly here. So we're going to have a market of about almost $500 million US to target. And we've already matched up with investors in China who are going to help us do this. And also, speaking here in Singapore, we've spoken to people in hospitals as well. So we're hoping to meet with them and further introduce our technology into that market space. So I hope that answers the question.
Okay, if not, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Cambridge Cancer Genomics. So next up, the next startup will also be in the medical and disease space. So ladies and gentlemen, going to put our hands together for complex disease detector from the Royal Institute of Technology, Sweden.
The future of healthcare is the future for all of us. And its success depends on all of us working together to create a true system that's focused on the patient. It's a future where we can prevent diseases before we need to treat them. Where we simplify every aspect of how care is delivered and funded. Where information follows patients wherever they go to ensure care is coordinated, more convenient, and tailored to their individual needs.
And this is our vision. My name is Alan, and together with my co-founder Max, we are going to talk about our innovation, which is called Complex Disease Detector. I think that it's not working.
No, the pointer is not working.
I think you changed the laptop, so you should change it.
That's a good start. It's okay, it's okay,
Yeah.
don't worry, don't worry.
It happens, right?
Yeah.
Judges, to be fair to this team, can I request that we let them start all over again and let the time read again? Shall we? A round of applause, please, everybody. Come, let's do this again.
The future of healthcare is the future for all of us. And its success depends on all of us working together to create a true system that's focused on the patient. It's a future where we can prevent diseases before we need to treat them. Where we simplify every aspect of how care is delivered and funded. Where information follows patients wherever they go to ensure care is coordinated, more convenient, and tailored to their individual needs.
Well, thank you so much, everyone. As you saw, so that's our vision. My name is Alan, and together with my co-founder, Max, we're going to talk about our innovation, which is called Complex Disease Detector. Did you know that heart disease is #1 killer all around the world? In fact, every 2 seconds, a person dies from heart disease. Here in Singapore, it kills 16 people every single day. But the problem is not the disease itself. It's the late detection of the disease that kills most of the people. So basically, many people don't know they're sick until it's too late, like my grandmother. She got a heart attack at my cousin's birthday and suddenly died. But she didn't have any signs or symptoms and died just in a moment. This tragedy got us thinking why there was no way to detect her disease in an earlier phase, and what if we could save her life? That was the ignition to start our innovative project, which is a tool to detect heart disease before it gets late. So what happens today when you have a symptom? You go to doctors, they examine you, take a blood test, ECG, and in many cases send you for angiography operation, which is very expensive and invasive. But it turns out that in many cases, angiography is not necessary. This translates to 100 billion euros in additional cost each year. That's enough to cover the whole budget of Sweden this year. During the 2 days diagnostic process, a lot of data is generated. In our innovation, we take all these data and employ our unique artificial intelligence algorithm to detect the disease at a significantly earlier stage, even if the patient doesn't have any symptoms.
This is how our system looks like. Here, doctors put data in different categories and get the result immediately. The interesting fact about our technology is that it's based on machine learning, which means the more people use it, the smarter it becomes. For a better understanding, let's look at a short demo of our system to see how simple and fast it is. Our solution can help both sick and healthy individuals. It also helps doctors to make a much faster and more accurate decision, which saves huge costs. Our value propositions cover patients, doctors, hospitals, governments, and the whole society.
So far, we have validated our technology in clinical trials with hundreds of people and already impacted thousands of lives. During our operation, we also interviewed medical experts and different patient groups to be able to provide a solution that met their actual needs. In these interviews, we found another social demand. 93% of the patients were asking for a way to use our technology at home. This includes elderly, people with disabilities, chronic conditions, and anybody living in the countryside or remote areas. So, in addition to our software, we have also developed a patented device that enables everyone to check their heart status at any time and from everywhere. Basically, it's an accurate and completely non-invasive solution to measure different parameters like ECG and then share the result with the doctor. Now, let's look at a short video to see how this device can change people's lives.
I'm 77 and a bit, and I think this heartstring device is ideal for people, particularly at my age, because I can do everything from home. I can talk to my doctor over Skype or FaceTime, and then I sent him the data of the heartstring device, and he knows exactly what advice to give to me. And the more you are housebound, the more important devices of that kind become. And I find it simply fabulous. I wished I already had one.
According to the research, more than half of population older than 40 start developing heart disease, which means there are more than 1 billion people at risk. To be more realistic, we only look at Sweden and India, where we already have our first paying customers. Our aim is to test 300,000 people within the next 2 years. And this is an achievable plan, because by offering a technology which is 2 times more accurate, 10 times faster, and 29 times cheaper than the current methods, our technology has the capacity to serve millions of people each year. We have a B2B business model by offering our software as a service to hospitals and clinics. Our revenue streams come from subscription fees, licensing, and usage fees. To realize our vision, we know that we must have a plan to be sustainable in long term. So we have established our enterprise in Sweden called Hippogriff to monetize on subscriptions. In addition, to maximize our market penetration, we also give away our unique device to our customers. Looking at the market, our main competitor is an American company called CardioDX. They use a completely different technology but target the same market segments. Basically, it's a gene expression blood test, but it has several limitations. For example, it can't be used people with diabetes. Also, it's very expensive. It takes at least 72 hours to get the result, and it's only available in the US. On the other hand, angiography and CT angiography are the usual methods that are used today, but they also have several complications. We have surveyed hundreds of potential customers, and based on the outcomes, we developed our pricing model and go-to-market strategy. Small clinics can purchase prepaid test packages, and hospitals can get subscriptions to do unlimited number of tests. Thanks to our global media coverage, we proved our customers' willingness to get access to our technology. And exactly this gives us the confidence that by selling to only 4 hospitals, we already break even this year.
Because of its innovativeness and social impact, complex disease detector has been acknowledged several times nationally and internationally, such as prestigious Forbes Under 30, Alfred Nobel Diploma, as well as European Change Award. Our strategy has been to take a proactive approach by participating in different competitions. This has helped us to get access to some of the best experts for free and also win prize money that we could invest into development of our innovation. Basically, these awards have helped us to scale our project and to go faster towards our mission. So far, we've been launching in Sweden and India and just started testing in Germany. Our plan is to expand to other countries over the next years. To achieve this, we have made several partnerships in different countries and different sectors. Of course, all of this wouldn't be possible without having a great team. Actually, what we are really proud of is our fabulous and expert team members who are coming from different backgrounds and have made this happen. As the founders, Max and I sold our first company when I was only 15 years old. To summarize, our life-saving technology can transform the quality of healthcare for every individual. And by giving away our device, we create an equal opportunity for everybody regardless of their location and financial situation. You know, when you lose someone that you love, you realize the value of every single moment you could be with them. We're building a movement to save those valuable moments, and we need your support. Because we should do it now, once and for all time. Because if not us, who? And if not now, when? Ladies and gentlemen, we invite you to join us to save millions of lives. Thank you.
I got a couple of quick questions. Are you guys launched in any markets right now?
Yes, yeah. Sweden and India.
Sweden, India, and so what are your metrics in terms of sales?
So we have $330,000 in booked revenue for this year. And the projection, very conservative projection, is 12 new hospitals and 10,000 extra tests for next year, which equals to 2.9 million in revenues next year.
And what's the average deal size?
It can be from 200,000 up to several millions, depending on the size.
But you currently have 330. So how many how many customers is that?
It's 4 hospitals.
4 hospitals.
Yeah.
3 in Sweden, 1
3
in
in
India.
Sweden, 1 in India, and then because they are the first customers, of course, we don't charge the full.
Of course.
price. Yeah.
And then how many of those software tests are being done every day,
So
or every week, or however you track it?
Yeah. So before even we launch, we did 45,000 tests in Sweden.
Oh no, I mean with
within
the
3
customers who are
months.
paying.
In Sweden, it's about 10,000 per month, 10,000 tests. And in India, we just launched in August, so it's quite early to say, but it's much bigger than Sweden.
So those 3 Swedish hospitals are doing 10,000 tests per day right now?
Per month.
Per month, sorry.
Per month.
Awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. And also last year we got backed by the Swedish Ministry of Health, and also before launching that we got access to the 2.4 million data of the cardiac registry in the Swedish Registry of Ministry of Health for cardiac screening, because all of them, like we have a journal of health that they have collected the data from 1950 until now in 4 different sectors, and we could get access to that to enrich our pool of data. So that was before launch. Then we did 45,000 tests last year, then we launched, so this year.
So because you are from Sweden, so I can imagine it is easier for you to convince your hospitals to adopt you. But moving forward, because this is a global issue, and what do you think are your challenges in convincing your adopters, be it hospital or patients, to replace gold standard in using your solution? Yeah.
That's a great question. That's why in the business model slide we show that we have B2B and also B2G, business to government business model, because for each single market that we launch, we have to look at how is the insurance and healthcare is funded. Who is the decision maker, who is the payer, and who is the main beneficiary. So in Sweden, for example, it's a state-related insurance. So when we got backed by the Swedish Ministry of Health, so basically we got access to the whole Swedish market. So to be able to scale properly, we just launched in these 3 hospitals. But this means that we already have the whole Swedish market, which is relatively small, and that's why we started to think how we can go to other markets. So in India, for example, I can give you how we started there, because it's a totally different culture. So we won another award, and through that, we got it from Capgemini, if you know them. So they helped us, because there you need to have somebody local. They helped us to get the deal, and then we signed the term sheets with the hospital, but it was them who made it possible. And it's the same reason that we are here as well. It's not to win another diploma or something. It's really to see how we can bring this to a market, not only in Singapore, but in the ASEAN region, because we need partners to be able to do it.
For the results that we've collected, how does it compare with angiography, and how, what's the correlation and how effective is that?
Yeah, so our goal is we replace the unnecessary angiography. So in many cases, the patients have very similar symptoms. So for example, they have chest pain, shortness of breath, and things like that that can be related to other diseases as well. And it's very hard for the doctor to make a decision. So this can play significant role in terms of a decision support tool for the doctor. So in our clinical trials, if you're familiar not only with the accuracy, but with sensitivity and specificity of the system, which means that our focus was on the sensitivity, which means the number of patients that were actually sick and our system could detect them early or correctly. So in the latest one, in the new clinical trial with enriched pool of data, the accuracy was 94.07% plus minus 5, and then the sensitivity was around 97%. So it's far better than the usual methods. That's why, as long as we can communicate our value proposition for, if you go to the next slide in the backup, so if we can communicate the correct value for each of these groups, then we have a deal. But if one of these, especially on the hospital side or governmental side, if they don't get it, then that will be quite difficult. First, we must convince them, because it's quite clear for the patients and for the doctors themselves. It's the others that are a little bit more challenging.
Also to add regarding angiography, I mean, according to the American Heart Association, 50% is the average of the unnecessary angiography. So we are far beyond them, so much better.
So when you showed your software earlier, sorry, I'm not really a healthcare guy, but you showed, was it probabilities that you showed, probability to get a disease? Is that the output of your test?
Yeah, that's the alpha version. We can't show the real version here.
But if the output is probabilities, how do you act on that? Let's say I have a 40% chance or a 60% chance. Is that meaningful, and
yeah.
what are you able to do with that information?
So if you look at the medical literature, so a person is defined as a patient with coronary heart disease if one or more of their arteries is narrowed or blocked more than 70%. So we have geared our software in 50%. So if the system shows it's 49% or 50%, then it's still very important for the doctor to make the decision. But if, for example, if 60% or above, then it's a very high chance that we are telling a very, very accurate kind of, we are helping doctor to make a very accurate decision.
To add a point, I mean, this will be, it's like a decision support tool. It wouldn't be a diagnostic tool. So we are just a pre-diagnostic. Yeah.
Is this at all customized to the individual user, or did you use all the training data to create a calculator and then that, like, let me put this another way. If I wanted to compete with you, could I buy your software and just replicate your algorithm?
No, not really.
Why not?
Because of the way that we have done it, it's like we haven't used any existing model. We developed from scratch.
The core algorithm,
the core,
we developed it
and
from
then how we classify each of those parameters and all that, we have defined some intercorrelated parameters. I don't find any simpler word to use it. But it's not easy. That's why there is, of course, the chance of somebody copying it, but it takes at least a few years. And that's why it's important for us to be the first mover in this market.
So you're saying with the same training data, it would take multiple years to come up with this same calculator that you have right now?
Yeah, because also the access to the data, it's not in many countries, it's extremely regulated. And then you can't just go and download a data set. So you have to create your own data set. And that, first of all, costs a lot of money. And also it needs quite good minds from both technical and medical side.
And have you guys raised money and participated in the, startup fundraising path that's typically done? And if not, why not?
So the answer is that we have been backed, but not on the equity basis. And the answer to why not is that we did another exit a few years ago. So we started this venture by putting our own money. And then we got grants and all that. We wanted to control the destination of the company in early stages, because if we wanted to bring somebody in very early, then we couldn't really achieve what we have achieved today. But now for scaling, of course, we are looking to raise capital, and we're being contacted very, very often.
At the development phase, like we got funding from the Swedish Ministry of E-Health and also European Commissioner, so it helped us. So we didn't give any equity. I mean, that was a strategic point of view, but we did the development and we have the full control of the company.
Okay, no, thank you.
Thank you, thank you.
Thank you very much, Complex Disease Detector. That was really quite a heavy post-lunch presentation. We have cancer, we have heart disease. Now it's time for us to really change the topic a little. Next up, we have Elephant Chen from Zhejiang University, China. They'll be talking about blockchain, trust, and transparency. A round of applause, please.
Okay, so good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. We are from Elephant Chen team. So today we are very happy to be here and show our ideas with you. So first, please let me, So first, please let me introduce our team. We have 21 members in our team with 7 PhDs and 12 masters. Most of our team members are from top universities such as Zhejiang University in China and NUS and SMU in Singapore. So in order to achieve our goal to build a blockchain consortium platform for enterprise users, we have formed a very strong technical and experienced teams. As you can see the highlights here, our CTO, Dr. Chen Jianhai, breaks the world record of the float point computation speed under 3,000 watt. Our co-founder, Dr. Huang Butian, who has already published 3 academic research papers and 1 book on blockchain technology for the international well-known journals and conference. And he also wins the National 100 Talent Award of China. Most importantly, he's the very successful serial entrepreneur who has already set up a successful software company with an annual revenue of $5 million every year. So our security algorithm designer, Dr. Ji Shouling, who wins the Southern Talent Plan of Zhejiang province. And we also have the very talented engineer, Dr. Wang Yunxiao, who is the winner of the World Top Coder competition. So for the team honors, we have been participating in a lot of meme competitions in China. We have won the gold prize in the Internet Plus contest, which is China's largest entrepreneur competition from over 100,000 projects, which earned us a chance to meet Miss Liu Yandong, who is the Vice Premier of China. We also ranked the top 1 demo in the Demo China 2016 from 4,082 demos. So why we do blockchain technology in finance? As we all know, the global financial system moves trillions of dollars a day and serves billions of people. But let's return to the core of finance, which is trust and how to build trust. So the current financial system relies on the third party to build trust. For example, we pay $20 billion to the intermediaries per year. And what's worse, 45 of them still suffering from the tampering problems, which cost $6.3 billion every year. Last but not least, the current financial system does not support the real-time clearing, and the transactions are not traceable. So this graph shows the amount that we pay to this third party every year. So blockchain technology are termed as the trust machine and the most disruptive technology in the future, since they can directly address these pain points and have the potential to reshape the whole financial industry. By using the cryptography and consensus algorithm, blockchain technology makes the whole transaction transparent, trustworthy, traceable, and immutable. So through eliminating the third party from the financial system, the cost of trust could decrease from billions of dollars to a negligible amount. And this graph shows the potential. This graph shows the potential market size for blockchain technology in the next few years. And according to Statista, it will grow at 61% annually. So what does Elephant Chain do? Elephant Chain focuses on the blockchain technology in finance. We have built a blockchain underlying platform for enterprise users with a world-leading performance in both speed and security. So usually the financial companies or the financial institutions cannot design such a reliable system because of the high technical entry barrier. So what we do is to help them to build an infrastructure so that they can easily use our APIs to make their own applications. This page shows our backend screenshot of our blockchain platform. So now you may have the question, there are a lot of companies in the market who are doing the blockchain technology, so why you are different and why you're one of the best companies in the blockchain technologies? So we have the competitive advantage in terms of technology and business application cases. So for the technology side, apart from the technical team I just mentioned before, we have 24 patents on our blockchain platform with world-leading transaction speed and security performance, both on-chain and off-chain. And currently, we can process 4 million transactions per day. We are also one of the members in the Hyperledger community. So for the business models, we charge the platform fee and the customization fees as a one-time revenue, and we also charge the maintenance fees, and we sell the blockchain chips as the recurring revenues. So for the business side, we are the company, we can see we are the company who has the most application cases for the business in the blockchain in finance in China by now. Here is a list of our existing clients. They are mostly the dominant players in the financial industry in China, such as the China Trust Clearing Corporation, Hong Kong Technology, Industry Bank, etc. So this shows the blue words shows the different business that we do for the corporates respectively. So I will give 2 real cases as an example to show what we have done for them. So the first case is for the Industry Bank. As we all know, the Industry Bank has a lot of contracts, say the law contracts, the deposit contracts, and the financing contracts, etc. So currently, these contracts was stored in the central server, and anyone who has access to the server can easily modify the data of the contract. So we help them to build a blockchain network to make sure the contracts were unmodifiable. The network includes Industry Bank, China Banking Regulatory Commission, notary offices, law offices, and so on. So the second case is about the private equity trading for international exchange. Here are the 2 problems I would like to share. I would like to highlight. The first is the asymmetric information problem. As we all know, if I was the equity holder, I only have the idea of how much equity I have, but I don't have the idea how much equity other people have. If someone told me he has 5% equity of a corporate, I won't believe him unless he showed me the paperwork. So when there are a lot of participating parties involved, most of the parties will not update their database in time. So if I sell my equity to you, and at the same time I sell the equity to him, he will never know that I already sell the equity to you. So that's the first problem. The second problem is a real-time clearing problem, because it is very hard to see the equity status of all the equity. So what we do is to help them build a blockchain network where the equity status was recorded at the very beginning. So every transactions after issuing a stock will be recorded on the chain. So everyone can see the equity status in time, and we can also trace the historical transactions. For the real-time clearing problem, it is always easy to solve because all the blockchain nodes share the same data format. So for Elephant Chain, we believe blockchain technology is still in the very beginning stage. Technology will only survive if it was put into real lives. Since we have done a lot of practices and our blockchain platform has been well recognized by a number of big corporates, we think we can make more values in the future. Thank you.
How much revenue are you guys generating from your customers?
We have currently we have currently we have $224K. Yeah, for now.
And are your contracts annual? What do the contracts look like with your customers?
The loan contracts, deposit contracts, and financing contracts. For example, for the industrial bank, they have many contracts.
Your contract with industrial bank, is that an annual contract? Is it a monthly contract? Was it a consulting contract? Or what does the contract look like?
Let me translate. 就是你现在的那个这个收入合同是月收入吗？还是说是一个一次性的？就是说你这个
It's one-time fee, actually. Yeah. We have. Yeah.
So basically, you built this piece of software for them, and now they get to use it.
Yes. Actually, we have two kind of revenues. The first is the one-time fee. We have the platform, blockchain platform. They do not have the budget or the capability to build that platform. So we build the platform, and we will ask them for the fee, charge them for the fee. At the same time, they want to customize their APIs. We will also charge that. This is called the one-time revenue. And for the first year, we serve them for free because they have already paid. But from the second year, we will charge them the annual maintenance fee. That's called the recurrent fee. Yeah. In the future, we are now trying to write blockchain protocols and algorithms into chips, into hardware. Because during our practice, we have found that software has low bargaining power because they cannot touch it, they cannot see it. Yeah. But if we write the standard blockchain protocols into chips, it will have a higher bargaining power. Yeah. That's
I have a
what
question. The clients that you listed in China, right? Since you are selling it like a license, to what extent are you aware of how much of their business is using your technology? Like for example, Citibank, right? Under those credit letter, what percentage of the credit letter that they process actually use your blockchain technology, or maybe they just license the technology from you and then do a trial rather than are they production with, if you know what I mean?
Actually, I can use an example to tell you. Can you move to the clients? Yes. For example, for the China government, China's National Trust and Clearing Corporation case, we built a blockchain system for them because they want to record all the large financial assets transactions in that blockchain network. And the large asset means it is higher than 10 million RMB. Each asset must be higher than that. For example, the land.
So does that mean that from now, at this point in time, all such large asset transaction processed through your platform?
Yes. It's currently alive, yeah. Because, for the China's National Clearing and Trust Center, they must monitor the big transactions. There are local transaction centers. For example, the Zhejiang local transaction center, the Tianjin transaction center, local transaction center. They need to provide their ledgers to the national clearing center. But currently, all these local transaction centers, they use different databases. Yeah. So if you ask them for their ledger, they will tell you that our database, our data format is quite different from what you required. So we need 1 month to prepare that. Yeah. And also, so they after they have prepared the ledger to the clearing center need 1 month to deal with all these ledgers. But if we use blockchain network, all the nodes share the same protocol, same data format, so we can do real-time clearing. That's why the China's government want to do that. Yeah.
So it seems like every project, although you have a platform, every project is like a system integration and it's a software development, project for each customer. So my question is, how are you going to scale?
Yes, for the software, you just develop it once and you can sell it many times, thousands of times. At the same time, we have a market. We have market strategy. The strategy is from big to small. That's what we learned from our practice. For example, we only, can you move to the clients? We only cooperate with domain leaders. For example, for the monitoring, we only cooperate with China's National Clearing Center, and for the private stock transaction, we work with the biggest finance company, Hang Seng. If we can do real cases for these domain leaders, the small companies will come to us and ask us to help them build that platform. We do not need to come to them and beg them for the projects. Yeah.
So if you take the example of the China government securities, right?
Yeah.
And you did the large financial asset transaction.
Yeah.
How long did it take you for them to start adopting it? And is it used in mainstream work right now? Or is it just a trial run?
就是你这个系统现在是已经上线了吗？然后是你花了多长时间去实施的？
Oh, okay. Actually, this one is already online, is alive. In order to make this system alive, we need POC, proof of concept. We need to develop the demo and show that to them to see whether they are satisfied with that. But after that, finance system, we are working on money. We cannot take any risk, so we will run it for at least half a year before it can become online, because it's about money. Yeah.
Assuming these are obviously big clients or big operators in China,
yeah.
And then you have like 7 of these, and you sell them on a license basis, right? Including some customization, and your revenue is $224,000 for this year. That means covering all these 7 clients. So you highly discounted or what?
Okay, let me translate.
Okay.
Okay.
We can show you. I can show you the receipt we get from them.
就是你现在有7个大的客户嘛，对吧？然后你今年的收入才20多万，是吧？他的意思是说，你这个每一个客户的就第一就是你这个软件收入是多少，然后你这些都是大的折扣嘛？你给他们打了1折、2折呢，还是说这个收入会是怎么样？
Correct. Okay. Currently, actually, for the non-clients, actually there are non-clients. 4 are real online, are real alive, running online, and 5 we just finished the POC states, proof of concept states. Only after that they are going online, we will charge them. At the same time, the domain leaders, so we can we can be free. We can work with them for free. Yeah.
Because one example is after we get the international exchange projects, 7 China banks chase after us instead of we finding them.
Yes. For the international, large international exchange, its name is confidential. Sorry, confidential. But when they know that we are the only blockchain, China's only blockchain technology company that entered the final round of the POC, there are 7 local banks, including Xiamen Bank, and they come to us and ask us to do something for them, to do some blockchain platform for them. Yeah.
So it's a little confusing to me that you have so many different applications so early. And what I worry is that you're structuring this company as a consulting company where you're building specific solutions for each customer as opposed to finding a product that every customer wants to use. So make me not worried.
So basically our business model is a little like the Oracle. So like Oracle, it's just sell the database to users, but users can store anything, like the banks, supply chain, etc. So basically we have a whole blockchain as a service platform. We have several modules. So for each customer, we don't have to reinvent the wheels. We can directly customize some APIs for them to use. Yeah.
At the same time, we only do the technology. We do not need to take the policy risks. They take the risks themselves.
But I guess my challenge is that when you're trying to market this product, can you bring back up the slides where you had the customers? Yeah. Which of these products do you think is going to represent the largest market opportunity?
Actually, I guess it's industrial bank and private stock transaction, because currently, after our practice, we have found that there are 4 kinds of applications that blockchain may work on. The first is the proof of existence. For the contracts, you need to prove that the contract is here and unmodifiable. And this is the first one. The second one is that for large asset transaction and for stock transaction, we can use blockchain to build trust. The third one is that for monitoring, because the government want to monitor everything. They want to do real-time clearing. That's what blockchain can do. Yeah.
So then will you continue to accept customers who want the other products that you don't think represent as good markets?
Actually, we concentrate on finance only. Yeah. But
so basically, for other customers, we can do very little efforts to a customer customize the system for their usage. Yeah. So we won't ignore those customers. Yeah.
Any more questions? Okay. If not, thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are half-time, so we listen to 3 startups, 2 in the disease and cancer space, 1 in the blockchain space. So before we call on the 4th startup, let's take a break. Let's take a break for the judges to discuss before we move on to the 4th startup. So let's take a 10-minute break. I'll be back with the 4th startup from the United States. Ladies and gentlemen, can I get everybody to take your seats, please? So as mentioned, this is the second half of the Lee Kuan Yew Global Business Plan Challenge Startup Pitching Competition. Before I invite the 4th team up, I have a public service announcement to make. So for many of the Singaporeans who are really looking forward to exercise their right to choose this Saturday, but unfortunately couldn't, well, there's a new option now, okay? The organizers have made the opportunity for people to select, for all audience, to select their choice of the winning startup today. So one of the 6 startups will be awarded the People's Choice award later. So pay attention, make your selection. Subsequently, we'll give you the instructions of how to cast your very important vote. And we shall do good, do together. So the fourth startup that I would like to invite up will be Kulisha from Brown University from the United States of America. So ladies and gentlemen, a round of applause, please.
Good afternoon. Everyone hear me okay? My name is Maya, and along with Eric, we are the co-founders of Kulisha. We offer a waste management solution that converts food waste into sustainable insect protein for use in animal feeds. But before I get into that, I'm going to start by talking about something we don't often like to talk about, the problem of waste. It's a problem that every single city all over the world faces, and it turns out it's a pretty big problem, especially in densely populated urban centers like here in Singapore. The overall waste management landscape can be broken down into 3 key categories: general, recyclables, and increasingly organics. We're interested in this last one, how to recapture nutrients found in organic waste and do something else valuable with them. Organics in particular are a huge source of greenhouse gas emissions when they're disposed of in landfills and in dumps. Moreover, overall, as a world, we're starting to realize that we can't just keep throwing stuff away. Waste is too good to waste. We need to come up with more closed-loop solutions rather than unidirectional flows. And the recycling of organic material presents a phenomenal opportunity to do just this. Diving into this a little bit more, in Michigan, in the US, this is where our company is based. The composting industry here has existed since the 1990s. There are currently 100 companies throughout the state. They charge an average of $50 per ton in tipping fees, and then collect an additional $75 per ton in revenue in the sales of their finished product, the finished compost. Despite the fact that the industry is relatively well established here, only 8 of these companies currently receive food waste. The remaining 92 only take leaf and yard trimmings, so grass, branches, and leaves. And this is the same across the United States. Increasingly, more and more cities are starting to implement compost, but very few of them receive food waste, despite the fact that food waste makes up 45% of the overall organic waste stream. This means that these companies are missing out on nearly half of their potential market, coming to $1.26 billion of lost revenue. This is in the US alone. So we talked to a few of these companies to find out what the deal is with food waste. And they said, for starters, it smells bad. Nobody wants to deal with this. It stinks. You run into zoning, regulatory issues, and it's difficult to find an appropriate location for your facility. As you can imagine, this attracts rodents and other animals to the site. And lastly, food waste is 80% moisture content. It's heavy, it's just difficult to work with. So we have a solution that addresses these 3 key pain points, allowing these compost companies to recycle the nutrients, converting food waste cleanly and efficiently. And this is what that solution looks like. We call it the Magic Box. It's a retrofitted shipping container system that processes food waste and outputs insect protein. So we use a particular type of insect called the black soldier fly larva. These larvae process the food waste, and then we harvest them to be incorporated into animal feeds. To give a broader overview of our flow, we lease these systems to compost companies. We place 1 or more directly on their site. But where our core competency truly lies is in the servicing of these containers. So we hatch black soldier fly eggs and then pre-treat these newly hatched larvae with a proprietary microbial solution. These newly hatched larvae are then integrated into the network of compost of Magic Box solutions. This servicing also includes general maintenance and labor costs. So we're essentially building a service logistics network. Then on the other side, the protein is harvested, taken to a centralized processing facility. The larvae are dried, packaged, and then pushed through retail channels to our end users. A little bit more about these insects. We really love them. They're an incredible type of insect. For starters, they reduce the volume of organic waste by 90% in just 10 days. They're rich in protein, amino acids, all the nutrients essential for animal growth. They are not vectors of disease and are not considered invasive to any region of the world. And finally, just last year, they were approved for commercial sale in North America.
So why would a composter want to adopt this solution? First, it increases revenues. By enabling these companies to now take food waste, you're essentially doubling the amount of revenue that they're able to generate. Second, it cuts the composting time. Traditionally, composting takes about 12 months, but using our system, we cut that to just 10 days. This leads to significant throughput efficiencies for the composter. It addresses the food waste pains. All the pain points that Maya had talked about earlier are completely solved using our containerized solution. And finally, it creates a higher value compost. The insect castings are actually able to generate a superior product than what is generated through the traditional compost system. Now, let's walk through the business model and the value creation per container per month. So we charge these companies a $1,000 monthly service fee. Now, so we are servicing the container, and what that leads to them is $3,000 in additional revenue for them without any additional costs. This is really powerful because what we're doing is de-risking this solution and netting immediately $2,000 in monthly profit for these companies. Now, we pay $9,000 to service the container. What that entails is labor, inoculation costs, and hatching costs. And from that, we're then collecting the larvae. Now, we sell those larvae for $50,000. And after selling costs, what that leaves us with is about $17,000, which is a gross margin of just above 50%. Now, this is a really powerful and scalable solution because each company can adopt between 5 to 10 of these containers, leading to significant value creation for both Kulisha and the composter. Now, where this product ends up moving is as a backyard chicken treat. So in America, in the United States, there's a growing market of people who have pet chickens in their backyards. And they really value insects as a premium treat. This is the space that we'd be playing in, and it's actually a very large and quickly growing market. It's about a $50 million market, meaning that thousands of tons of insects are moved through this treat market in the United States annually. But this can be scaled up to the commodity protein industry, which is a $60 billion industry across the world. The second key space that we're playing in is in food waste management. So as cities are continuing to grow through urbanization, they're requiring these new innovative solutions to managing food waste particularly. That's why it's growing at it's a 9% CAGR and a $30 billion industry around the world. Now, there's about 7 other companies that are pursuing black soldier fly technology. However, we're doing it in a radically different way. So they're taking what's called a centralized approach. So they're trying to design these huge factories and facilities that can take an entire city's food waste. However, this requires completely rewiring the way a city is disposing of their waste. It requires buy-on from a municipality, and it requires a high investment in CapEx. What these companies are missing is that solutions already exist to dealing with organic waste in composters. And rather than completely reinventing the wheel, we should be tapping into the existing infrastructure that already exists to manage food waste. So using our approach, we can scale our technology far more quickly than our competitors. We have a really powerful team leading this. I worked with startups in the past, most recently working with a company to move a new innovative product through sales channels. Maya has worked with various waste management and entomology organizations, working with some of the world's leading experts in black soldier fly, focusing on specifically how you can apply this insect to waste management. And Viraj has led teams of engineers in the past, working on developing new innovative technologies, and is the perfect person to be leading our container creation. We're also led by some of the leaders in the black soldier fly industry, waste management, and food manufacturing. We've had an incredible amount of traction so far, raising over $250,000 through non-dilutive funding by winning some of the world's most prestigious food security competitions. We've also built 2 fully functional prototype facilities. And finally, we've partnered with the University of Michigan to build and develop our first fully functional commercial-ready container. What our timeline looks like moving forward is by November, we plan on beginning sales of our first insect product through local retail channels. We plan on finalizing the design and implementation of our container by February, and then by May, we plan on moving this technology to our first paying compost customers. This is where the funds from this competition would be used in financing the build of those first initial containers. Now, what we have here is a really powerful technology that has the potential to be the standard of food waste management for the smart city of the future. We believe that we can move this technology forward and change the world one black soldier fly at a time. Thank you.
I did not understand your business model slide at all.
Yeah.
You're killing me with that. The arrows go in all different directions. So can you walk through that again?
Yeah, totally. So what we do is we essentially drop this container at the site. So let's say you're a composter.
How much does the container cost?
So the container costs us $25,000 to build.
All right, there we go.
So that's our cost that we incur, and we.
And
have
how
to
much does, and who pays what back to you?
So they pay us a $1,000 monthly service fee. And then we generate the revenue, or we generate revenue from the sales of the insect. So
what is $9,000 servicing cost?
So what that entails is, so essentially we're dropping the container at your site if you're the composter, and then what we have to do is supply the labor, bring the
So it costs you $25K for the box and $9K
monthly
to run the box?
Yes.
And who is responsible to sell them?
Who's responsible to sell the insects? So
no,
we
not sell the insects, sell the what do you call it?
The box itself.
Yeah.
So once we start moving this container to composter site, we'd probably want to hire somebody who sells, who's a salesperson for assets for waste management sites.
And then where does the $3,000 value creation come from?
So that's coming from here, and that's coming from the additional revenue generation. So the whole idea is that these companies are not taking food waste right now because it's too difficult. So the tipping fees that Maya was talking about, and in fact, why don't you can answer?
Yeah, so it's two sources: tipping fees and then the additional revenue.
What's a tipping fee?
Sorry, tipping fee is what if I'm a waste hauler, I pay you the composter to take waste, and it's on a per ton basis.
And what was the other one?
Clarification. And then secondly, they retain access to the frass, which is the insect castings, which is the fertilizer. And that can be integrated into their compost channels. So
and what's the split? The 3,000. Can you go back to that slide?
Yeah. So
how much money are they making for picking up this stuff, and how much money are they making for selling the waste?
It's approximately 1.75 times more the compost than the hauling fees, but they get to set their own hauling fees.
So
I just what's the split of that 3,000?
It's way more on the tipping fees. So it's probably
way more on the tipping fees.
Okay. Tipping fees. Yeah, sorry, I'm clicking so much.
And then the other thing that was confusing is that there's another processing step. So you can't take the stuff that comes out of the container and sell it. You've got to process it again?
Well, so there's two things that are coming out of the container. The insect's poop, and these composters already have channels to move that. And then there's the insects. So we take the insects, and then all it requires is simple drying. So it's just a drying process, and then those insects are ready to move.
And those insects are where you make most of your money, right?
Yeah, the vast majority of our money is on the protein side.
Can you leave that thing out there, because otherwise...
Okay, yeah. Fewer animations next time.
Okay. Insect selling. What are selling costs?
So since we're not moving it yet, we don't have an idea of what it's going to cost us. So we just looked at what a traditional CPG costs to package and market the product, which is about 25% from what we found online. And so we just estimated a little bit conservatively and took 30% and just said that was our...
And what's the wholesale protein cost? Let's say you didn't package this you're just selling it as feed. How much could you make?
It's about half that. So the insect protein wholesale price would be half that, so about $25,000 in insect protein.
And then how long would it take you to make back the money that you invested in the container?
It's about 2 years.
2 years?
Yeah.
Okay.
So let me be clear. So let's say you work for a compost. So you have to drop a 25,000 to this box, right? And then you have to pay 9,000 per month, right?
Yeah.
So basically, so how many duration? You say every 10 days you could.
Every 10 days.
You could collect.
Yes.
So how much would that be typically?
How much money is that?
Annualized, yeah.
So the revenue that would be generated per cycle, which is every 10 days, is about 1/3 of that $50,000, and about 1/3 of those $9,000 costs. Does that make sense? So we're essentially getting 3 cycles per month.
Okay.
And then the revenue generated is equally split amongst those 3 cycles because it's just the larva being sold.
Okay. So the 50,000 insect protein is a monthly basis?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So we would have to finance those initial containers, and then the other costs would be immediately, because we'd have cash flow coming in immediately from the sales of the larva.
All right. Yeah, you need to work on this chart.
What goes into your servicing costs other than manpower and?
So the biggest cost driver is actually the cost of the eggs. Yeah, the cost of the larval eggs.
The thing is, I think it is not quite easily accessible of this, this larva, black larva eggs or whatever you call that. How are you going to assess that? And especially, I don't know, maybe in your country it was easy, but how about in other regions?
Yeah, so it's actually a little bit easier than you might think. There are people who just sell bulk black soldier fly eggs. So we're actually outsourcing breeding. We're not doing that ourselves, and it's not too difficult. There's multiple people getting consistent egg production.
You said you had how many pounds of throughput would go through one of these containers every month?
Yeah, so 50 tons of food waste, and that would yield about 5% black soldier fly in final dried product.
And your prototype, how many pounds of food waste can that process per month right now?
Right now about 20, yeah. So we're planning on increasing our capacity.
Why does it have to be bigger?
Why does what have to be big?
Why can't you just start selling your prototype? Why do you have to scale it up further?
The insects.
Nope, you said your existing prototype can process.
At current capacities. It doesn't really. It's just it's if we're aligning incentives with these tipping fees, if the composter is able to take more food waste, then it's better for them. And so we do want to make sure that they are making some margins above the $1,000 service fee that they would have to pay us.
I'll actually follow up on that. So, because the $25,000 investment in the container is not small. I guess the other way to think about his question was, if you just had a $10,000 container first, they can always buy a second and a third. And by that time, you're making some money already. Like, I guess another way to think about it is there another way to finance this so that it's less of a load and you can actually grow into it? Is a smaller size viable, or do you need the $25,000 size to make it viable?
So this is actually, when you're talking the scope of a composter, a relatively small investment. So we are making it a relatively small size. So a traditional composter would take 5 to 10 of these. So it already is scaled down. And a piece of average investment, like a piece of equipment, they're investing, it's tough to say like average because there's all different types of equipment, but we found about $500,000.
So could you transfer the investment of the box, the magic box, to the compost guys once you've proven that it makes money for them?
Yeah, so that's absolutely a model that we could pursue, is just selling them the container and have them finance it themselves. We chose to pursue...
That's not where you're making money anyway, right?
Yeah, because now we're making money at all. Yeah, it's just to increase our adoption rates. We think that de-risking the solution by not having them put money would increase the adoption rate.
So I'm a little confused. So basically, the first month of operating this thing, it's going to cost $34,000, right? It's going to cost $25,000 to set it up and $9,000 to service it, right? And that spits out $50,000 of revenue if you do the fancy thing, but $25,000 of revenue if you just sell on the wholesale market. So basically, they can pay back the box in 2 months. So why wouldn't you just be selling $25,000 boxes?
So the payback period that we calculated is just with the service fee, because we think that it's most fair to allocate just the service fee, like the price of the service of the container.
But I guess what I'm trying to say is, if you could go to someone and say, I'll sell you a box that pays for itself in 2 months, and then generates $25,000 a month thereafter, and after services that be around $15,000 a month thereafter, that seems like a good deal.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And then you don't have to raise money to build boxes, which seems like a really good deal.
Yeah. And I can just walk you through, so this is definitely something that we're open to, but why we chose to, for right now, pursue this is because when we were talking to both advisors and customers, what we were worried about was if we have to sell it as And it does de-risk it and simplify it if we'll say we'll buy all the larvae back from you all, but we were concerned that they would be concerned about, oh, now I have to find a channel for my larva, and this isn't like something that I want to worry about.
But food feed is commodity. That's a wholesale market, right? Like, we have a company in this space, and they're just selling it off to like salmon farmers. Like, if you're just producing like insect protein, there's like a market for that. You don't need to have brokers or anything. Especially if you're not doing this fanciness, if you're just selling it wholesale.
Yeah, and so you're absolutely right. That's definitely something that we
Would the recyclers pay $25,000 for a machine? Like, what does that look like? Is that expensive for them, or is that cheap for them?
No, it's not. So we talked to
and they could probably reuse their existing labor force, so it wouldn't cost them $9,000 to service it, right?
Yeah, so they do have a really small labor force, so that was a concern of ours, is that we actually don't think their labor force would be able to do this, which is why we're servicing it. But from an investment standpoint, if you say each person would be about five of those, it's about $150,000 investment, give or take, 125. But it's not like so like just say on average there's about 10 big assets that they hold, and those assets on average cost about $500,000. So the majority of their costs are capital costs. So like
this is cheap.
It's a relatively cheap asset for them.
Sorry, the other way, could you put up the first slide where you had the tipping fee per ton?
Yeah, absolutely.
The two revenues.
Yeah, so that was a $50 tipping fee and then $75 per ton.
Right.
Of compost.
So could you do a side by side? So just again, building on that, to show them how much money they make on a per ton basis working with you. Is it 50 also? Is it 100 per ton? What can they make if they process the food waste?
We use these exact same numbers, which
is because is this for the food or is this for the other waste?
This is across the board tipping fee for any type of organic waste.
Yeah.
So this one, they wouldn't necessarily earn a little more, or could you show them that not only do you spend less on our machines, you actually earn more per ton? You get what I'm trying to say? Because of the new, because you're giving them a new revenue stream. Again, it's just.
It would be more net revenue because they're able to just collect more tipping fees, but it doesn't change the per ton basis since they charge a flat fee of like 50 per ton no matter what the waste is.
Yeah.
Where are you guys located?
Ann Arbor, Michigan.
Why?
I graduated from University of Michigan. Yeah, and well, okay, so
I graduated from Yale. I'm not in New Haven.
So we found that was where. So we were actually wanting to base somewhere else. I guess it's a startup failure story, and we actually were based. We were going to move to a site in Texas, and immediately before we were about to move, they were like, "We don't want you." It's like we're like it was. This is getting a little bit because it was a different model, but we changed models and we were like, oh my God, where are we going to put our first prototype? And we were finding it challenging for us to like contact somebody random and be like, let us put a container and grow bugs on your site. But in Michigan, I was part of the sustainability network there, so we had actually visited local like waste disposers, and I was familiar with them, and they were okay.
Do you want customers in a place that freezes over during the winter?
Yeah, it's a good way to prove if our technology is scalable throughout the United States.
So yours is captive breeding. Now, is there any conditions that you need to have in order to put your magic box?
Yeah.
In terms of temperature, environmental conditions?
Yeah, whatever,
Yeah, so the Magic Box would have minimal electricity inside. What's cool about these bugs and what makes it possible to do this throughout the winter of Michigan is that the bugs generate a huge amount of heat as they metabolize the waste. So as they eat, they grow from eggs to about 1 inch in just 10 days. That's a lot of energy that they're burning through. So,
but it's all contained in the container itself, so it doesn't affect the environment and whatsoever.
And that's actually a value prop for these composting customers because right now, another reason they can't take food waste, it's difficult to maintain huge windrows of compost throughout the winter.
Any electricity required?
Yeah, very small amount of electricity required.
Actually, the majority of electricity is used to just ventilate.
Any water supply required?
Not water supply.
Just electricity.
Just electricity.
And then who's the team? You had like a slide that said business strategy team. Are those the founders or is that another side team?
We had an advisors and mentors slide. Is that what you're referring to?
No, so those are the founders.
Those are the founders?
Just go to the medium for us.
Oh. Where?
So the reason we named it business strategy, we have 2 other team members working on research and development, so they're focused on other aspects.
Are they co-founders or are they employees? Oh, okay.
they were brought on later.
Okay, yeah.
Can you go back to that slide? I just want to see what everyone does.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, we're out of time.
Okay, I'll just put it up so that you can
Or
see
1
it as
minute
we
left.
leave.
And then who's the CEO?
I'm the CEO.
Okay.
Okay, generally we are very sensitive about strategy team, you know. We don't like that name. Yeah.
What?
Strategy people don't do much.
Oh, okay.
That should just say co-founders. And your titles should be...
Yeah.
Okay.
Or
Noted, we'll
just put
change that.
co-founders and whatever. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. You know,
Okay.
we like simple, defined roles.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Yeah, I think you guys have something really interesting, but I think you really need to do a better slides in terms of where the compost leading to. Because if it takes us so long to figure it out, then you know. And you know, I was talking to Michael whether should you be selling the box, and a lot of stuff to figure out. But it's good. You know, it seems like there's some winning.
That's where you need to go to an accelerator or incubation house. Yeah.
YC.
All right, thank you very much.
Thanks for helping us to walk through the model.
Thank you, Kalisha. Can we now next invite the next team on from Spectra Plasmonics from the Queen's University from Canada. A round of applause, please.
Mike. We good, okay? Yeah. Okay, so good afternoon, judges and members of the audience. My name is Malcolm. Our company is Spectra Plasmonics, and our product helps with rapid detection of trace amounts of chemicals, including illicit narcotics and food and water contaminants. Chemical detection is needed everywhere in our modernized world. Drug overdoses are now the leading cause of death for Americans under the age of 50. Government agencies are expecting harmful food additives to be one of their most pressing issues within the next decade. 83% of tap water worldwide is contaminated with harmful microplastic compounds. And terrorists are becoming more creative in how they hide explosives, chemical, and biological weapons. In some capacity, in all of these instances, they rely on the rapid detection of a minute amount of molecules in order to be tackled effectively. But in order to achieve this trace chemical detection, the common lab techniques used are complicated, labor-intensive, and take hours to obtain results. Chemical detection devices, known as Raman spectrometers, as seen behind me, offer a promising tool for simple and rapid chemical detection. But they have one glaring issue. Because of their inherently weak detection signal, the applications for Raman spectrometers are limited to simple and bulk samples and lack trace and complicated chemical detection. But with the technology on this chip behind me, that can all change. With this chip, combined with Raman spectroscopy, we can achieve rapid trace chemical detection that is low cost, accurate, and simple to use. We manufacture these chips in Canada, and our company has the exclusive right to commercialize this patent-pending technology. And here's how it works. Add your chemical sample to the surface of the chip, then shine the laser of your Raman spectrometer onto the chip surface. Due to the unique metallic structures on the chip, the chemical signal of molecules is amplified by over 1 million times, resulting in a clear identification of your sample and ultra-low levels of detection. So, why does rapid trace chemical detection matter? In the North American laboratory services market, 46% of revenue goes towards labor expenses due in part to long and complicated lab procedures. And in US and Canadian public crime labs, there's the persistent issue of high volume backlogs, of high volume backlogs. And so enhancing the capabilities of Raman spectrometers has massive potential of saving organizations time and money. And with our chip, we can achieve trace chemical detection and cut it down from hours to minutes.
So our technology is an enhancement accessory to the Raman spectrometers, and this is a fast-growing market. So year over year, the global market is seeing near double-digit growth, and it is expected to double by 2021. And North America is the perfect place to launch our product. It is where we are currently seeing 45% of global sales. And because our technology has the ability to not only enhance, but expand the capabilities of Raman spectrometers, we believe this will be another force for growth in this industry. So our beachhead market will be accredited labs that use these benchtop Raman devices, such as food, beverage, and crime labs, sorry. So one of the reasons that we believe we'll have no problem in competing in this space is that we have proven that when comparing to the largest market competitor, we have an enhancement signal that is 20 times better. And so what we will be doing is achieving legitimacy by conducting pilot tests with government agencies. And then when we launch with our version 1 of our product, we will be seeing recurring revenue, as it is a one-time use item. But that's where it just begins. Version 2 of our product is where our technology really shines, as we are currently developing the world's first truly reusable enhancement platform, and this will allow for high throughput testing. As well, using a unique active mode, we will be able to detect bacteria such as E. coli, other proteins, and biological markers for diseases. And our long-term vision is to have this technology incorporated in other product lines that tackle more complicated issues such as marijuana detection, portable environmental testing, and point-of-care medical diagnostics. So our current production capabilities allow us to produce 500 chips per week. Yeah, that's Ryan. And we are producing 500 chips per week at a cost of $5 per chip, and this is at a prototyping facility. And we plan on selling this chip from between $30 to $60 a piece. And this puts us well within the price range of the competitors, which sell from $10 to $80. And so we'll be utilizing 3 channels to achieve sales. That includes the already existing distributors in the market, as well as attending industry-specific conferences and trade shows, as well as an e-commerce platform on our website. And we are currently in talks with 3 of the largest Raman spectrometer device manufacturers on potential partnerships to open up a 4th sales channel.
So our team formed just this summer through the Dun & Deshpande Queen's Innovation Center in Canada. We have backgrounds in business, science, and engineering, which will help us take this to market. But more importantly, we have a strong group of mentors that will help us get there. So Dr. Anton Tutov received his PhD in organic chemistry from Caltech, and he has a lot of executive and advisory roles in science-based startups in California, and he's well connected in this space. Roger Bose has commercialization and C-suite experience in sensor and laser industries, and Dr. Dirk Rodenberg has business development and consulting experience with many high-tech companies. As well, Brian Sterling has been a food safety leader in North America for the past decade. We're also working closely with the inventors and other researchers from the lab in which this technology was invented. They are constantly working on the fundamental science behind this technology and providing us advice on potential product improvements and product line extensions. And in our few short months that we've been together, we've already begun to get some significant traction with some major organizations. So we've successfully conducted proof of concept tests for a global beverage company because they have been looking for a quick trace chemical detection method for the past decade. We visited the Government of Canada's Food Inspection Agency, and the very first application that they're going to use our product for is the detection of harmful additives, including melamine, in infant formula. With our technology, they'll be able to do this 12 times faster than commonly used methods, while having detection levels that exceed FDA and World Health Organization standards. We've also successfully detected trace amounts of some common illicit narcotics with 100% accuracy. This quick and accurate detection will help clear the backlogs in crime laboratories and finally give police units the up-to-date data that they require to tackle growing drug epidemics worldwide. In the forensic space, a couple days ago, we had an extremely successful meeting with the Health Sciences Authority here in Singapore with 2 of their departments. And upon our return to Canada, we will be attending one of the most advanced laboratories in North America, the Center of Forensic Sciences in Toronto, to demonstrate our technology. And finally, longer-term research with the Royal Military College of Canada, detecting explosives and chemical warfare agents has begun. This is because it is anticipated that our chip will provide a 10-fold increase in productivity to a NATO environmental mission.
As Asia is the fastest growing market for these spectrometers, We saw this competition as the prime opportunity to make industry connections and generate early product interest in the area, and we are already well underway in doing so. The cash prizes of this competition would go towards our product development, manufacturing costs for our scheduled pilots, as well as other essential activities. Our 2018 cost estimate is in the realm of $200,000, and with a $100,000 cash prize, the funding will be matched by funding organizations in our home province in Canada. For years, comparable technologies have been mostly confined to academia and only used by highly trained specialists. We want to change that. Our aim is to develop a reliable product being capable of being used across a wide array of industries and to develop the go-to Raman enhancement accessory globally. With a market-enabling technology, Raman spectrometers could one day become universal tools for chemical detection to tackle our world's most precarious detection problems. And so, with the expertise from the research group we work with, and our expertise from our advisors, the drive from our team, and the support from this competition, we can revolutionize trace chemical detection to create a safer, cleaner, and healthier world. We are Spectroplasmonics, and we're happy to take your questions.
Your manufacturing cost, $5 per chip. This is based on using the prototype facility. Yeah? Do you see that going down even much more, if you start to operationalize this?
So Ryan and I manufacture the chips ourselves, actually. And because it uses a semiconductor process, it's very easy to scale up. So we believe we'll really be able to lower these costs per chip.
I would peg it at $2 maximum per chip, and $2 per chip maximum COGS, and ballpark $50 is the cost per test of the user.
Can you guys talk about the IP? Did you have to license it from the school, or how does this work?
Yeah, so the owner of the IP is our university, and we work with the Technology Transfer Office there. We have the exclusive right to commercialize this IP.
And what is that? What did that cost you?
So it's a percentage.
It's low.
Can you say how much? Is it a percentage of revenue? Is it a percentage of your company? What is
percentage of revenue? Yeah.
And is it in perpetuity or for a certain number of years?
We have yet to firmly establish that. Part of our attendance in this competition is checking off one of the boxes, providing the legitimacy. I can tell you that they're very excited with the partnerships that we've put in place with the organization and future customers.
But that deal is not in place yet? Is that a signed deal, or is that still negotiating?
Negotiated.
Okay.
So SERS technology is not new, and of course it has a slew of problems as well. Could you share a little bit more about, your reliability and your the accuracy of your detection?
Yeah, so we put a lot of emphasis on our pilot demos. We have some academic papers supporting this. The researchers, there's a team of them, they put out very promising results. The 100% detection of illicit drugs, as one example, that was done across 100 tests. And so they successfully identified trace levels in both water and complex mixtures of these illicit drugs. And so we're continuing to work with these agencies, the food agencies, the forensics labs, put the product in their hand and let them do what they need to do with it and let them be the judge of the technology. From everything we've seen to date, we're very confident that we can deliver.
Why aren't the scientists who developed the IP spinning out and the company? Why aren't they the co-founders?
So the inventor is also in med school, and so she's doctor direction. They're academics, they're tenure track professorship, these sorts of things. They, not so jokingly, insinuated that the future students that they have run through this group will, very strong potential as future employees, and they have a lot of technical expertise, and that's something that we're looking at very closely.
And how did you guys decide to work on this at all?
Yeah, so we were part of an accelerator program at our school, and we heard about this technology, and we thought it has such a great potential, both in our country, North America. There's lots of problems we could use it for, but worldwide. You need trace chemical detection wherever you go, right? Which is that's where we heard of it through our accelerator program and why we wanted to take this thing to market.
And who's the CEO? Okay. That was completely not obvious in your presentation.
So you're saying that you want to do it in Canada and then next Singapore. Why Singapore? I mean, it's so far away from Canada, and what makes you think that, I mean, yeah, can you explain why Singapore, and what does it take for you to be successful here in this region?
Yeah, well, Singapore is a very great location because in terms of adopting new technologies and trying new things, Singapore has to be one of the best countries out there, right? So this is a country where they'll be willing to be sort of early adopters, so to say, of both our technology and just using this detection in general. As well, we have met with, during our brief week here, some parties that are interested in using this, which is very exciting. As well, like I did my exchange here last year, and that's how I heard about this competition. We were very excited in coming here because, once again, this can be a base to entering the rest of Asia as well. In terms of if we want to expand and do lots of tests in Asia, Singapore is a perfect place to be headquartered.
Can you talk a little bit more about the mechanics of why it's faster to use you guys? So like in a lab setting, is it that it takes less time per test, or like what actually makes this faster?
So I'll draw from an example, forensics. A sample lands on your desk, it's clear, could be not clear. You have no idea what's in it. It's taken from a crime scene. So what you would currently use Raman for is a qualification test. What is in it? It might see some of the compounds, it might see all of them, though I highly doubt it. Particularly if it's colored, you cannot tell what is in there. And so you would take this sample, you'd use other solvents, hazardous materials, you'd run it through a series of tests, and all requiring PhD level skills. And so that's where that labor cost comes in. That 46% of lab revenue in crime labs goes directly towards labor expenses. And so these are hour-long tests. One shining example that we like to draw from is the detection of melamine in milk. It's a 6-hour process to do one product test using a very simple process, less than 30 minutes, and the detection itself takes under 1 minute to complete using these units.
Thank you. One application which I think has great potential would be detection of explosives in airports. So you find that the volume of sensors and the number of airports in the world will make it much more worthwhile than trying to tackle laboratories. What are your views?
So in the case of airports, there already is incumbent technology. Mass spectrometry works quite well in it, and I'm sure people have seen when you take a swab and you put it in. It happens quite quickly, and it's quite effective. So it's unlikely that this would ever be a replacement for that. Now, in other in-field testing of explosives, because these mass spectrometers are quite large and you would have to drive them around with a truck, for somebody in the field, this would be a lot more effective to detect it on the go.
The agent that you use is liquid, right? It has to be liquid in nature, so that's why you can't test you can't test the explosive.
Correct. It would have to be diluted in some liquid beforehand.
Right. Yeah, because yours is using what, lithography on substrate technology.
Yes, right. So that is part of our prototyping trials. We're not limited to that as we develop, and that a lot of the funding that we receive today will be dedicated towards more scalable solutions. Granted, lithography is scalable, but there are alternatives out there, and that's something that we're actively exploring on the engineering front.
Okay. Thank you, guys.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Spectra Plasmonics. So now we come to the last team for the pitching competition. Ladies and gentlemen, a round of applause for Regal Solutions from Scuola Superiore Sant'Anna, Italy.
Yo, well done on changing up that. I just took on B2. That was really well.
Hello everyone, I'm Alessio Balsini from Italy, and I'm co-founder and senior engineer of the startup Regal Solutions. And since I'm a technician, I will be glad to answer all of your technical questions. But for the pitch, I leave the word to the CEO of our startup, Arash Gholamzadeh Nasrabadi.
Thank you.
Virgo Solution is a spin-off of Scuola Superiore Sant'Anna, one of the most renowned universities in Italy, and very specialized in ICT, cyber physical system, and biorobotics and robotics. We are a spin-off of it, and we are developing a smart tire to measure the wear of the tire. Why it matters? Because 34% of the accidents have a tire tread depth below the legal requirement, and because 2% of European GDP is attributed to road accident. In terms of Europe, we are talking about 286 million each year spent in cost. Plus, because 100% of the tire industry want to move to the cost per mile. They want to shift from a product to a service. How they want to do that if they don't have any way to measure it? As you may know, companies and cars are getting way better, and breakage is very rare. But still, we have a lot to do in terms of maintenance of the tire. It's the only things that you need to measure. How we want to talk about an autonomous vehicle when we do not have an autonomous tire? That's why we think that our product will be really disruptive. What are the today approaches? It's been 15 years that all the tire industry and a lot of other companies are trying to find a solution in terms of measuring the wear. What actually is today working? It's a manual approach. As you may understand, it's not scalable, and it's a lot of cost in terms of employees. Other approaches are visual approach. It's still in research and development. The main method that is using is laser and camera. They're very expensive, and maybe in the future they will be cheaper, but the main problem is the reliability. They work in an environment that can get mud and dirty, and they cannot measure anymore. It's not possible to measure. On the other side, there are another approach is a digital approach, still in research and development, and that's where a lot of tire industry invest a lot of money. And they didn't come out with the solutions because they were trying to integrate sensor into the tire tread. What are the drawbacks? First of all, shorter lifetime of the sensor comparing of the lifetime of the tire. Overheating and bipolar wear that increase the likelihood of explosions. Fixed cost per tire, and finally, how you want to supply energy to the sensor, how you want to give energy to the sensor. That's why it comes out Virgo Solution with their product, the Smart Tire Approach. We move from inserting a sensor into the tire tread approach to making the tire a sensor itself. We use the conductive, electrical conductive property. We extrapolate this information and we process it with our mathematical model to measure the quantity of the tires and to know precisely the wear of the tire, very precise. Plus, we use an enhanced TPMS. TPMS is tire pressure monitoring system, and we want to create an enhanced TPMS that is on board already in most of the vehicle in Europe and America, and they already have a communication infrastructure. This will help allow us to get in OEM market. On top of that, we collect all this information, we storage them in cloud, and we will perform a lot of data analytics on top. These information are really relevant to create business on it. First things, we can create real-time action for safety purpose. You may know when it's time to change your tires and when you have some risk. On the other side, a lot of data analytics services. These solutions is patented. We perform FTO and state-of-art analysis, and now we extend the patent on international level, PCT. Let's see what can be some services in terms of truck. For example, there are a lot of savings in operative cost. Using our system, you can optimize tire, extend their lifetime, and also with a lot of positive in terms of financing in full optimization. Why? Because if you extend the lifetime of the tire, you have the chance to use the last time, you know when it's time first to change, a lot of people change it before or too late, and then you extend the lifetime of the tires, and in this way, the last part of the tire is the ones that provide up to 15% of full optimizations. And then it's a lot of savings when you're talking about a truck, 1 liter, 3 kilometers. On the other side, we reduce, digitalizing the measurement, we reduce employees, and will provide a business intelligence software for predictive maintenance. On the other side, as I said before, 34% of the accidents have a tire tread depth below the legal requirement. This means that there are tremendous interest in this data for insurance purpose. And this data can be integrated in the black box for insurance and provide saving up to 25% and profiling also the risk of each driver. How we want to make money out of it? First of all, we want to license our system to tire industry and TPMS producer. And the early revenues will be contract customization. We need to integrate this technology in their ecosystem. On the other side, we can create a lot of services on top of that, aggregated sales, but also revenue sharing model with the tire industry with white label platform. How it's going to work? We have two markets, the aftermarket and the OEM. In the aftermarket, we see tire industry as the promoter, the ones that will promote our solutions and will sell it. We will provide the services and they will sell it to the final clients, their fleet and the commercial vehicles. On this model, we will have a revenue sharing in terms of services with the tire industry itself. On the other side, in the OEM market, there will be a slight difference. Can you imagine BMW, Mercedes, Volvo, working with the services just provided from a tire industry that tie them just to a type of tire or a model of tires? That will never work. What we will provide is an agnostic service collaborating directly with the automotive industry, and we will have a revenue sharing model with the tire industry depending on the services sold on the specific tire, and everything can be tracked and shared with them. What are our today industrial network? We are incubated in Ericsson in Italy. It's 18 months we are incubated. They're supporting us because they have a lot of interest in autonomous vehicle and connected car. We are collaborating with Marangoni, a multinational retread tire, and we are doing a lot of research and we make the pilot test and also some other prototyping with them. Within our network, there is Goodyear, Bridgestone, Michelin, and Trelleborg. I want to also thank the company that, of tire industry that came here today to visit us. And what about the team? Regarding the team, there is a multidisciplinary team. There is me managing all the business side. I have been also Fulbright students, and I have been in US and Silicon Valley. 3 PhD, Alessio Balsini, that is a student PhD, expert of embedded system and electronics, low and high level programming, sensor. And then we have Alessandro Biondi, the expert of cyber physical system, real-time system and automotive embedded system. Davide Calvaresi, expert of artificial intelligence. And finally, we have Professor Buttazzo that have more than 30-year experience in automotive sector that is mentoring and supporting us. Regarding the awards, as I said before, we had several awards. One of the most relevant were Innovative Startup Lab and Fulbright Best. Fulbright Best is a program that selects the best Italian startup, and they bring them in Silicon Valley to have a chance to know better the ecosystem and gain knowledge about it. Some words about, we think it's really important to share with you why this grant is really important to us and how we will use this money for. We think that innovation is something that really need to be widespread and accessible for everyone. And that's our beliefs. This money will support us to reach the right prototyping phase and phase of the startup to try to avoid any kind of, let's say, exclusivity with tire producer that will reduce the likelihood of the widespread of this technology for everyone, because we are talking about safety and we are talking about a better quality of life for people. The money will spend for IP management, structuring better IP management, new patent, R&D activity, mostly in terms of finalizing the prototyping to reach what it can be a production phase, and finally cover the pilot on-the-road pilot test. Thank you for your attention.
So guys, I'm a little confused. I get the pitch, I like it, but I don't understand why you aren't just building tires as a service for commercial purposes. It seems like That sounds like a great
commercial
business.
purposes, you mean
trucks and,
Well,
for companies as opposed
yeah.
to individuals.
As you may know, in a startup, you need to focus on something because otherwise too much energy are wasted and you cannot scale. We have faced within the network, all the multinational. And of course, the traction in terms of tire as a service is higher in terms of truck because they do a lot of miles. They have a lot of more business and more easy to sell the services on it. That's why right now we are focusing on it. And
I think you misunderstand.
Oh, sorry.
Like, instead of partnering with tire companies, why aren't you manufacturing your own tire and selling directly to the trucking companies tires as a service? Because I mean, tires as a service seems like a really good idea, but why aren't you just doing that? Why do you have to work with the tire companies at all?
Okay. Well, it's about strategy. It's something that can be done. Of course, we need a completely different approach and a completely different structure because then you need to have all the production phase of someone producing for you, branding, distribution, and can be an option, of course. What we saw easier was licensing the system and creating service on it because the distribution will be easier, the go-to-market faster, and also more potentiality in terms of revenues in the short term. But
wouldn't that company then make most of the money? Like whoever's collecting the money as tires of service, let's say it's Michelin, wouldn't they be generating the lion's share of the profit as opposed to you? If they were just licensing your technology?
Okay, how do you want to do money, you mean? Yeah, well, basically, right now they just have a product. What they will have, it's additional services on their product that will increase revenues and probably in the next future, in a vision, it's like that no one will own a car and then everything will be like lease and the tires will be per miles. Then what they will have as an advantage is just a method to measure the tread and finally getting the business that today is the gambling. And we will get a small part of it in this way. I am aware of that, but some estimation of the business that we can generate, the penetration we can do, it's just, we take a small part where you're talking about billions. Then can be good, can be not. I mean, this is a matter of strategy and seeing the partner, what they're looking for, and then maybe finalizing, understanding better what is the best route for us.
I'll go again. Do you have a full-size prototype of your tire on a vehicle right now?
Yeah. Okay, here you are, sorry.
Yeah, so next slide. So at the current stage, what we have at the current stage is a validated prototype that works on a real truck tire. And what we prove with this prototype is that it is possible to achieve a measurement with a precision that goes over 1 millimeter. And this measurement is also stable. And being stable is also reliable. We also produced, this was the first step, we also produced a batch of tires with a thread of different geometries and different materials, and the system worked with all of those tires. So the next step has been to develop a new prototype to improve our indoor tests, and this prototype is wireless, so it can rotate, and it is also digitally controlled in such a way that it is possible to make an easier and more flexible measurement.
And how do you have to, do you need to solve the power problem as well? Do you have to provide a power source to the tire or no?
Of course, being wireless, you have to provide power to your sensor. And this is why, once, this is just a prototype, but once we'll be in the market, we are planning to work together with a TPMS producer. So with the TPMS, you already have all the shelf, all the batteries, military batteries to provide power, and all the communication protocols to send messages wireless. And so, yeah, the power is provided with a...
And then does this change the If I were to buy this tire, would I be at all concerned that because you're changing the materials in the tire, that your tire might not be as safe as the tires that are on the road today?
You mean when you buy the tire? Can you please repeat?
So
I can answer to that. Tires are conductive by themselves. It's their nature. They need to be conductive because otherwise they create electrical statics. And that's why they're conductive. We don't change anything in tire process. We just create two plug-in to attach our sensor that is super TPMS. There already exists something like this. And then we measure through the electricity conductivity all the way.
So then can you work with existing tires?
That's what we are doing. We are producing on existing tires the connection to plug our and make tests on it. Yeah. Yeah. Our technology is patented. As I said before, we feel it's the 2 December 2015. We did a structured FTO and also state-of-art analysis before. We are supported by the technology transfer of our university and other experts because we win a lot of prize in equity in kind by legal people that were expert in terms of patent. And there was no sensitive invention in these kind of things. And what's next is we are prototyping and finalizing all our IP to understand if we need our patent or if we need to create a constellation of patent around it, or what we did, it was enough. That's why we still are not working with multinational, but working with a smaller company, just to protect better ourselves, to know what we are doing properly in terms of the production phase, because we know that the things is working, our concept is properly working, and what we just need to figure out better, it's the production phase, and then we are finalizing with a smaller tire producer. And after that, if we need to fill out our patent, we will do it. Otherwise, we will start a co-creation with the tire industry. Or maybe considering also producing our own tires maybe in China, and then giving our brand just a smart tire just for services.
So just to clarify, so your process has to be done at the stage of manufacturing the tire, right? You can't take an existing tires that's already on the road and then kind of convert it into your application?
No, we produce. I mean, the tire need to be produced to be compliant, and but finally there is not a lot of change in what is the tire. The tire remains the same. We just need two ways to connect to create this kind of analysis of electrical conductivity.
You have a microcontroller, eh? Is that what you do? You put in the tire?
No.
Yes.
Huh?
One back. Yeah. The microcontroller is also provided by the TPMS, but in the case of our prototype, we have to be able to send an electronical stimulus to the tire and to read back the electrical signal that we receive. So yes, we have a microcontroller inside, not inside the tire.
Entire system that you are introducing in this smart tire, what does it consist of?
This consists of a box that currently contains just a microcontroller and a few other electronics, and wires to reach the tire. So this is also what has to be changed, the little change that has been produced in the production line for the tires. So that's it, and a receiver, but currently we need a receiver. After, the receiver will be directly the receiver of the TPMS systems.
Yeah, to answer your question before, no, we don't insert anything in the tire. That's why it works, and the other never works. What we use is we want to use is a TPMS, make it a super TPMS that instead of measuring just pressure, will measure also the wear. And then we use all the infrastructure. They already have the standard, and the go-to-market will be even easier. And can you imagine in the automotive sector where there are a lot of standalone units, add another standalone units that works by themselves. That's why we want to integrate and create a sensor that make multiple tasks instead of one.
So you don't insert anything to the tire?
No. We just connect to it.
Okay. Have you tested on the mean time between failure? Because even you connect to the tire and the tire is on the
Yeah,
road?
with the multinational we were working, we produce a lot of batch of tire, and we make quality test. They make a lot of different kind of tests on them to see if they create problems or how they can work. And there is no difference, there is no problem about it. Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, so let's give our judges some time to arrange their notes. No, it's not the end of the whole competition yet. So now I think it's time for me to introduce an interesting concept to everybody. This concept called a pigeonhole. If a pigeonhole is used as a verb, it means to classify and categorize something into something specific. But now I'd like to introduce the other concept. Pigeonhole as a noun, as a voting app. To pigeonhole is to gather ideas, to form into the holes, to attract your votes, to choose the people's choice for People's Startup today. So can we have the instructions? Take a look at pigeonhole used as a noun. Go to the particular website here, pigeonhole.at. You can access it using your phone or your laptop. Thereafter, key in the event password for this particular pitching competition. LKYGBPC in caps. After you entered the site, you'll be able to see the 6 companies that pitched this afternoon, and you can cast your vote. So maybe you can take 2 or 3 minutes to go to the site, pigeonhole.at, key in the password, LKYGBPC, to cast your vote. I see that the judges are also trying to cast their vote now. Any problems? Okay, can we have both screens showing the pigeonhole site so that, friends on my left can also check out? There's no point seeing me on the screen here at all. Can we do that? So pigeonhole.at, pigeonhole.at. Okay. So, ladies and gentlemen, our judges, led by our chief judge, Shirley, will be taking their leave to go for deliberation. The results will be announced at the awards dinner later tonight, where the winner will do a 5-minute pitch. So, okay, please cast your votes. Participants for the pitching competition, please come back in about 10 minutes later. They'll be debriefed by the organizers. And last, to really end off the session, thank you very much, everybody, for being here today. Results will be announced. Contact the organizers to know who is the winner. And really, a round of applause for all the companies that have pitched today. Thank you so much. But remember, cast your votes. So for the participants, it's 3:50 now. Can we come back at 4 o'clock? I think the organizers have something for you. It's a debrief.